Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Monkeys Are Really People Radio Network. And I would love it if someone in the chat room would just let me know if you can hear me right now. This is Michelle Gaza, and tonight I'm going to be interviewing Sevan. Is it Bomar? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, Bomar or Bomber. You know, I've heard it all the ways.
Okay, what do you prefer?
Bomar. It's Bomar.
Bomar. Okay. Bomber only when necessary. So we had just been discussing before we got on air sort of a loose framework for the conversation this evening, but we do want to also leave some time for people to call in. Actually, one of the reasons I was so motivated to do this is whenever I see your show, I have so many questions, and I'm like, oh, my God, I wish he had a call-in feature. But I also am aware how challenging it is to do a show if you don't have a producer, you know, to take the calls in. So. But anyway, first off, I want to say thank you so much for your service. Your show has been really incredible and just super validating because I'm writing fiction, so I'm working a lot in the realms of the unseen, and it can be very lonely in there in the sense of like just like, whoa, what am I seeing, and is this resonating because I'm stuck on something, or is there something sort of objectively there that's worthwhile for me to discuss, you know, with other people, or is it just my own shit? So hearing you speak, it's like the sketch starts to get colors filling in, and I can, like, see better, you know? And James Gregory said it really well to me the other day. He said, it's like you're talking about an invisible picture. I'm like, yeah, invisible picture. So do you want to just sort of start riffing, and we'll go from there?
Well, sure. I mean, we can get this thing started. I just want to definitely say thank you for having me on the show, and just wholeness to everyone. And, of course, you're more than welcome. All the information that we've been able to produce thus far has really been a cyclic or basically a very perpetual thing with the resistance and the members of the resistance and all the individuals that have contributed their time, their resources, and their skills to putting this together. And yes, for sure, the nonfiction and the fiction begin to blur. Even today, we're going to talk about the mind, body, and soul, but after a while, you start to see how everything blurs, that if you're doing one thing, it kind of blurs into another field. And so it's just really good to kind of have a beacon through all of this. Like, it's serious. We're going through life. We don't have to walk around like lemmings and dummies all day and not paying attention to the big questions. And it's good that, we're finally getting together and everyone with that same idea of wanting to know what expansion really is starting to collect themselves and putting themselves into the right type of frequency. So that's awesome.
You know, and as I hear you talking, I feel like maybe I should just share with people just the real structural outline of what we thought we'd do this evening. So I had proposed that we kind of discuss what's happening right now, present time on Earth. And I know that changes like second to second, especially right now. There's just so much energy shifting. Like, I'm a different person every day. Like, literally yesterday I was trying to find something, and I couldn't even get back to the part of me that had moved it, like amongst my art supplies. And I was like, which timeline am I on? It feels like that sometimes. So it's moving very quickly. So we're going to try to, as much as we can, talk about where it is right now, what's going on, how did we get here, what are the traps keeping us here, and the choices we're making, consciously or otherwise. And then, to me, it felt very important to spend a lot of time talking about what do we actually want? And I'm sure a lot of the people listening in, otherwise you wouldn't even really be interested to the show, are feeling a much more intense and deep connection with their own power. So, okay, we're coming into our power, we're coming into our own, so what are we going to do with this power? How will we wield it, you know? And when our models have been about force, not power. So that's the framework for this evening. I hope we do a pretty satisfying job with that, but that's it. So let's start really there. Like, what's going on
really
right now?
I would just say really excellent stance, by the way. It's like, coming into the power, coming into the energy, the full realization. So now what do we do? It's like, you feel like this phenomenal power, but not really knowing where to direct it. So it just kind of may get directed at the neighbor, or may get directed at the girlfriend or the husband, or, may get directed in the wrong area at times. And so I first want to say, I really want to start this off on the right frequency and right tone. Just let everyone know Earth is a gift. I had even a chance recently, about 72 hours ago, to go into such a higher level of the crown chakra and interfacing with the oversoul, which is basically just telling you how it is, but it's so soft and gentle the way it's being explained. But explaining, you know, Earth is a gift. It's the human species doing this to the human species. Let's get that clear. Before the human species arrived on
Okay, everybody. Everything is fine. Everything is beautiful. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to see if they could actually hear me now.
Okay, so now I'm going to stop for station identification again. Monkeys Are Really People Radio, and I would like to thank Michael, Mr. Fun, for manning the chat room this evening. This evening's show is brought to you by Jive Turkey the Book. You can find out more about it at jiveturkeythebook.com. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. So we were kind of talking about where we're at right now, generally speaking, on the planet.
So I do want to let everyone know, you know, because other people have connection problems on the...
Okay, I think he just went out again. So I'm going to ask the audience, can you all also just like say a prayer for the energy between Costa Rica and Chicago? No comprendo what is happening. So we're going to wait again for him to come online. You know what? I'm going to bring some of the callers online. Oh, here he goes. Here he goes. Okay, James, hello.
Yeah, I think that may be switchboard issues. Like, I think it may be like smashing things together in the switchboard, because these kind of errors, they generally they don't happen if there's like a breakup in the voice and things, and you can kind of tell it's a connection issue. But with these breakups where they're just cutting off, it's definitely probably a switchboard issue.
You know what? If I log out, does it? Sorry in the audience for the housekeeping, but just we're going to have to show you.
This is real.
Show you the back ending.
This is organic.
Yeah. Right. Right. We're going to be real transparent. So if I log out of the internet connection, does it cut off the show? I think it does. That's the thing. I'm wondering.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking you should be okay, but if you have like two switchboards open, that may be your situation.
Oh, that's what's happening. That's what's happening because my partner's producing in the thing. Okay. So if it happens again, we might have to have him log in as someone else, yeah. So, Michael, if you hear this, if you could log out and log in as somebody else, just like a generic guest. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Here, I'm gonna keep going into this because I know people on the phone are like, okay, are they gonna get started or am I going to sleep? Right. But just to let you know, again, to set the tone of this, Earth is a gift, and you have to understand that this planet can stand on its own. And for you to understand exactly the fertility and abundance that's associated with this planet, simply take something like an orange and cut it in half, such an organic orange that you just find in the field growing on a tree, and then count how many seeds are in there. It'll be like tons of seeds. And if you can imagine each one of those seeds is a tree, and if you just would plant it, then it would be a tree for you in a certain time, a certain measure, then you can just get it. You can really understand that if Earth was just an open field and everyone could really plant and build up their current and energy and be fertile, etc., then there would be a lot of abundance. So the idea of scarcity has come from the human species, not from the planet. So we just need to make that clear today so that way people start understanding how to direct their energies and, you know, when they get upset and, you know, sometimes they get mad about being here and they feel like Earth is a trap and all this stuff because the reality to this conspiracy wrapped inside of Enigma is they want to get you to hate Earth. So that will make sure that you don't reincarnate next and then they can have Earth, which is what their desire is. There's a group of individuals that they want this planet. Because look how much stuff is here. Look at the resources. Look at all the things that are here. So what happens if someone in their mind comes up with an idea and says, I want to make it mine. I want it for myself. And then you'll start getting the idea of the controllers, as I call them the so-called controllers. So that way we understand this. Now, there's another major key to this also in regards to what goes on with karma, because many people are asking the even bigger question. Why are these individuals allowed to do this and nothing bad seems to happen to them? This is what I call the quirks of the universe. From my deeper studies, it shows me that there are certain mystical things going on with this planet, such as weird things. Like if you wear white gloves, and I'm not saying this is true, but weird stuff like this. If you're wearing white gloves while doing dark deeds, then the color white counteracts the darkness. There's weird type of quirks like that with this universe. Is
that why magicians, like the stereotype of the magician is to have gloves? Oh, wow.
Well, there's multiple reasons for the white gloves, but what I'm saying is I just want people to hear this overall. There are things that they know how to do. Notice how they don't do most of the killing. They order other humans to go and kill other humans. They don't do it themselves. This is to keep their hands clean of the ghosts that haunt you or the dead person. You were the last light they saw, so they go back to you being haunted by hundreds of thousands of people that you've actually killed. So think of how this is working from that perspective.
Right.
Understanding you can get answers to all the questions, but you got to really start asking the right questions. And then you have to pursue the answer. So, of course, I've been able to pursue this for quite some time, and I've been experiencing this. That's the other thing. Like, a man can never tell a woman what pregnancy and delivery of a baby feels like. He'll never be able to do it. So there's things in this world that you can never explain to a person unless you actually go through that experience. High levels of spirituality are like that. Unless you've actually gone through the experience, you coming to explain to someone high levels of spirituality or balance and harmonic levels of spirituality, but you've never accomplished it before, is impossible. So now we have individuals that are coming forth that have had these encounters and occurrences with the spiritual world, and they are all starting to say the same thing. This is how you'll know if someone's authentic, because there is only one truth. So when a person says they have the truth, then what they should start saying should resonate and should be harmonic with you. And this is what tells you, if you got to start pulling out the inconsistencies and the lies, or whether you're hearing someone that is actually working with the flow and the current of the universe, or what I also call the Innerverse. Because now
what I've noticed is like there's like emotional locks and intellectual locks that we've like metabolized. They're like in our bones that have messed up our GPS systems. So basically, it's like we were conditioned to switch everything. So, we see darkness as light and light as darkness. Everything is backwards. So it's like when I hear you say that, I also think of people who've had a lot of trauma whose system doesn't even know how to do that because they're damaged. And it can be fixed. I don't mean to say damaged in a pejorative way, like dismiss them. But, I mean, a lot of us have a damage on that GPS. So we're susceptible to trickery,
For sure. I mean, I call it the crash-landed ship. I mean, our real power is within the energy centers within our body. Some know that as Kundalini, Prana, etc. So if that field is not functioning properly, it creates a plethora of blockages and stagnancies, and that equals something in the mental, physical, and spiritual world. It doesn't just happen and there's no reaction. But this is also where this thing is gone crazy at this point. It's an extreme short circuit to a human brain because we're always looking for who is evil then, who is the evil one.
Right,
It's your responsibility. And I'll tell people this, evil or doing dark deeds, it has its causes and effects. If a person goes around stealing all day, it's only a matter of time before they get caught and something happens to them. Just understand the regular level of life. So what you're really looking at is the universe is not sitting back here trying to figure out who's good and who's evil, and the universe is either good or evil. The universe is not into that. It knows that whatever you do, there is a result for what you do. Systems handled.
Right.
It goes with everything else. And so while we are down here short-circuiting on who's the bad one, who's the good one, and then even partaking in daily, all the time, in what we can consider bad for one group and good for another group, then this leaves us in a constant of going nowhere. It's like a dog chasing its tail.
Yes.
So,
keeping people in like a very narrow range of experience, which is what colonization has done, keeps you, it's the whole curiosity killed the cat thing. Everybody's like afraid or unaware of what's happening outside, and it just perpetuates itself because everything that you actually need to heal is bad or forbidden or taboo or people flip it and do it in a rebellious way that's like a toxic mimic of the real healing power. Does that make sense?
Here's a major reason also for that. Humanity was not geared to work in division. It was not, humanity is not geared to work where one person does all the work, or 1% of humanity does all the work. It was never designed like that. If so, then everyone would be exact duplicates of each other. How it was created is you'll see certain individuals have a lot of physical strength, while others have mental strength, others have spiritual strength. Some can't see and they're blind in their eyes, but that means that their sense of feeling is heightened. Why some, you see what I mean? So what happens is we're all functioning in this group where everyone knows their gift. Then you don't see that separation. So so-called know how to work division within races. The race make everyone have a race or a competition about who's the best. This, of course, always leads to eugenics. It always leads to your caste systems. It always leads to hierarchies. So there is a specific, there's, again, the cause and effect, and that's why if you move out of the good and evil, it allows you to see the steam of it, because good and evil, in my book, equal just black and white, or hot and cold. I'm looking for the steam or the warm of the whole thing. That's the answer to the things. And so this is also how we have to gear ourselves, especially going into 2013. We really have to allow our minds to take a break on what it does all year. You see now, look, Hurricane Sandy. Because the Earth has to respond to all of the ideas of the Revelation style, Mayan style, like I say, in your world like the Mayans, the Mayan structure phase. So it has to manifest some way, but it's good. That's with the total world destruction, because that is not something that is possible. This is what we always have to understand. Earth's been here for billions of years. It's about whether we can ride Earth, not whether Earth is going to survive. So
I've actually heard a lot of mystics say that Earth is already ascended and she's waiting for us to catch up. So it's not even about, save the planet in that sense anymore. And what you're saying too about the division, I feel like sort of metaphorically the same thing, but flipping it is people are divided inside. We're divided from our own selves. The division we see outside is internalized and like going through the looking glass to go in your inner world, and it's the same thing. I mean, there's race riots inside of me all the time. So it's like, even if you could like shift what's happening externally, it's never gonna be a harmonious thing where people can ascend unless you figure out what is inside of you, because that's what's getting put out into the field, and then we're all reacting off it. But like the source is always inside, and we're getting pulled outside all the time. This culture that overstimulates us.
For sure. I mean, it's really about also being the ruler of yourself. Like when we talk about being masters, we're masters of ourselves. Like it is a battlefield by the body. There's a lot of chaos and confusion, but there is one who stands over that. And that's really where you just have to spend all your life being the Lord of your own body and keeping everything in harmony in your body. And that, of course, is a major part of your intake. And that's it. Our evolution does come from what we intake, like what our input is. The first one, of course, with the body is food and what we're putting inside of our bodies. But there's also our minds and also what we're putting inside of our soul. This is the one that's been completely omitted from this particular version of the Matrix, is that people are not understanding that their soul also eats too. And it changes its color spectrum. It gets larger. It gets smaller. So all these things are happening also with the soul. And because that is the ultimate vehicle, that is the vehicle that is going to be used to transcend you into the next experience, which everyone will be going to, then it's almost it's higher for us in priorities for us to really study more of what's going on with the spiritual vehicle in order for it to affect the mind and the body. Why? And we're living in a reality where people are using their mind. Like I said, the mind has power, or the mind is over the body, or mind over matter. And they're using their mind to actually determine what is what's authentic and what's true. And that's just not how we should do this, especially just because of the difference between the age of the soul versus the mind. The mind basically starts as soon as you enter into this world and a little bit of the gestation in the womb. The soul is infinite. So it's almost like relying on the soul more is definitely our guide. As if everyone wants to know what is the solution to all this, the solution to all this is speaking always by some of the most deeper speakers such as Jordan Maxwell, is that in the times that we're going in, the only thing that you're really going to need is a very close spiritual connection.
Yeah. More than
yourself.
anything. Yeah.
So, we haven't really started, but, we do have to talk about what is right now. Like, I didn't know if you wanted to take a break or if you wanted to get right into this, but you just let me know.
Yeah, well, I feel like we can keep going, and I'm watching the clock, so I'm going to make sure that we leave time at the end. Oh, I neglected to tell everybody, we do have 2 hours for the show, and I know that's kind of long, but this is our first interview together, so we're kind of finding our way, too. We'll see how it goes if the energy sustains us, but I'll make sure to leave time for callers because I want people to have a chance to call in, and I'm really curious what is on other people's minds. But, let's spend a little more time talking about what is right now, and then I'll be watching the clock, and then we'll shift into I guess the middle part of the topic is how do we get out, and the third part is, okay, once you got that freedom and you've shaken free, what do you want? I think a lot of us know what we don't want and what we don't like to be in and what kind of fields we don't like playing in. So a lot of people on this call are very powerful and they're going to be constructing the next grid. So what do you want to do? Whether it's your own or a collective one. I think that it's helpful to really be thinking about that and putting a lot of energy into that positivity to balance, the necessary, but, sometimes sort of negative view of what's going on right now because it's a little hectic right now.
Exactly, and also I think I'm going to have to go over a little bit of the beginning that I said earlier because I'm not even sure how many people actually heard that before we got disconnected, but it was really the most valuable information. I'm pretty sure everyone was clear earlier when I talked about that, Earth is a gift. So we do, again, before beginning this call, still have to understand that and that our actual connection here, well, I'll just say it like this. It's the human species that's doing this to the human species. The Earth, again, can stand on its own. If man and woman were not here, it doesn't mean that the Earth is going to end. The Earth has been here for billions of years, and it's seen the extinction of many species. So what we're dealing with, the situation that we're actually dealing with, is with our own species, as vast as it is. So first, I just want to say that. And then the second thing is I want everyone to know that, again, today we'll be unwrapping riddles and wrapped inside of enigmas, wrapped inside of conspiracy. So in order to do that, that means we have to stretch out into some vast topics here. So if there's anything that does offend a person or rubs a person a wrong way or another, I just ask you to check your harmonic meter, see if what is being said is actually the truth and you're just upset because it may be something going on with you, but definitely don't vent that energy out on the host or even myself because this is still something that we're doing bravely, which is uncovering what's really happening and asking all the real questions and willing to accept anything as the answer as long as it connects with what we just call the universal system or the universal law. So to go into this, I just want to say to everyone, like many people here are aware of Nazi Germany and everything that took place there with those scientists going into the United States and, a lot of the curriculum that we're on as far as schooling and all of these things being part of basically an experiment of individuals who are bent on the idea of total world domination, that there was never any loss in World War II. People are aware of that, and that those factions just decided in order for them to fully get to the peak or pinnacle of their plan, it was going to need to appear to everyone else that they lost. They were going to need to go away for a while, become hidden, such as the Illuminati, and then work on some of the more broader plans that it takes to really take over a world. When you say a statement like, I'm going to be the conqueror of the world, like Constantine or Alexander the Great, it is indeed just a statement. To actually fulfill that, even if you actually govern every single territory, meaning that many of these empires, such as the Persian Empire, stretched over the entire world at a certain point, or the king being the king of the entire world. But to do that on a spiritual level is an entirely different matter. And that's, of course, why man is constantly laughed at by angels and other beings that are basically superfluous, what we call extraterrestrials, because to work from the physical plane to try to control anything will not put you in any control because there's a time delay here. The spirit moves faster. So most of what you experience is happening in your spiritual body. You catch glimpses of that while you're dreaming. And so to understand your physical reality is to understand the delay and how that's affecting you. So the first thing is people need to ask themselves, since it's kind of like now that everyone knows the story about those scientists and things, that what are they doing now? Like, here it is, we're in 2012, we haven't really heard any from, many of the powers in the world or the old diabolical minds. We're not getting any data on them, so what are they doing? And what they're doing is they fully interlink not only their military systems, not only their computer systems, not only their embargoes and trade agreements and the United Nations, they're fully linking their system. Now, we're very excited about the computer, but to them, they are not even excited. I wanted to mention this. It was only a tool that they needed to continue this massive plan of basically getting everyone to walk off a cliff. What we have to understand is that the technology that we're using now is part of the era that I'm just calling the silicon. This is our word. The silicon is actually when plastic is of value. Now remember, through ancient times all the way up until now, what we use for currency, money, moon energy, as they could say, abundance, what we use for current is highly connected into our body and our energy systems. So if you go back to certain indigenous cultures, you'll see that they, and of course also it became their god, by the way. Whatever you were using for currency or trade or money or moon energy became your god. So the ancient people were first worshiping the moon before they were worshiping the sun because it's easy to see how the moon is connected to fertility. Later on in indigenous tribes, you see first a horn god being worshipped because cattle was the actual trading currency. How many cattle you had determined where you got that wife, that palace, the whole nine. So I'm not going to go throughout history to show you how it changes. We go into the Metal Age and we go through all these different ages based on our currency. But let's fast forward till now. We've come to a point where we're going off of paper. If you go around the world and you start traveling, you see the different currencies in different worlds and in different parts of the world, you'll see that the new currencies are made of plastic. It's actually a plastic dollar bill. But of course in the United States, it's still paper because they are still in the last part of the transition of the silicon. So now what you have, of course, is the computers and the technology, which is pretty much made of plastic. The chips, the silicone conductors, et cetera, is only plastic. So the integration of the plastic into our bodies is part of the next official stage because if you notice, plastic is extremely inorganic. So when you eat it, you become more or less inorganic. When you use it all the time, it's always in your hand. And this is why a deeper speaker, I think that was Daniel Winter, was saying you have to watch your children's interaction, especially with plastic. Like remember, they got that little horse shaped like a piece of with a piece of wood, 40 or 50, 60 years ago with the toys for kids. They were wood things, not plastic. Now it's basically the entire store is full of plastic. So let's just understand the silicon. So what Ubermensch has done, and I'm using this term because you have to understand the pinnacle of the Nazi plan is Ubermensch, which some people mistook to mean superhuman, but Uber means witch. So this word means super witch. And now you'll actually get the idea of all this psychomancy, this scrying, this advanced state of artificial spirituality, which is basically the nest egg of the New Age movement. But it does something. It's not, sometimes when people analyze this stuff, they'll say, they'll analyze the full thing and they'll say it's fake and, these people, they have no power over me. And then they'll close the book, never realizing that at every single corner, every single angle that they move, there is something of that kind of nature around them. So if you understand it completely, because as they can say in G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. Your body has the ability to counteract things by just knowing what it does. Because it'll neutralize it from the spiritual plane. So even though it'll be as a remnant or illusion or a shadow, which is all this world really is. It's a shade, a Malkuth world. They've already mapped out what this world really is. We're not in our higher states. I want anyone to start marveling about being in their higher state, but still not flying through the sky and super powered up and doing things all over the world. Like, that is through ego that we've accomplished something. This is our greatest thing. But we don't have to also beat ourselves up about it either. This is the difference in the American mind versus the Eastern mind. Meaning, in the Eastern mind, in the Eastern traditions, you never spend much time complaining. It's that kind of thing. You just get to work. Complaining is looked at always as a waste of time, and thinking is always looked at as a waste of time. Most of the work that needs to be done is even physical work at times. Like your fast and your cleansings and your writings and your books and all the different things that you really have to do, the stuff that would really take up the time and space of your complaining or disgruntled. So it's interesting now that what we'll find is underneath all of this, like if you want to see who's behind the computer, who's behind CNN or the Cohens or the priests or Cain, as I call it, or Conan, these are all the same words, CNN, who's playing the Kabbalistic game with humanity's mind behind that door, sometimes the other side of the looking glass or through the gateway of the portal. Who is on the other side? And what we'll find is, because our idea of what's really on the other side is so illusionary and so generic, it's not than the generic Illuminati themselves, meaning that what we think is the next adjacent plane to us, by saying that they govern that plane and that they're experimenting in that plane and that these symbols do things in this plane. So let's also break down first the symbolism, because we want to know what they're doing right now and how they are doing it. Now, there is two powerful symbols here on this dimension that you cannot really walk too far without seeing one of them. And that symbol is either the pentagram or the hexagram. So I always say to people, if I landed on this planet yesterday and I was already schooled in universal knowledge, the first thing I would ask you is, what's up with the pentagram hexagram thing? Don't you think it's a little excessive? Meaning, why is it necessary to put these kind of symbols everywhere and for government agencies and states and countries to represent themselves by this symbol? It leads to a big what's happening in reality, but more on a spiritual level, so you would have to absorb it that way. What does the pentagram and what does the hexagram do, and what is its real symbolism tied into? So, of course, we have now people rewriting history. They'll they'll bring something like a light bulb and say they're the first ones that invented it. And this is, of course, in the American school curriculum. I guess, who is that? Benjamin Franklin or one of these guys created light bulbs. Seeing light bulbs in Egypt. So what we have is we have a rewriting of history. So when we ask ourselves, again, how much of this history and how much of this idea of what we think is the world anyway is really authentic?
Well, and that goes back to the whole thing about, the mind versus the soul level of knowing, right? The mind is so afraid right now because it's intimidated by what's outside of it. The mind operates on logic, and it's like this kickback where if you let the mind really take over everything you're doing, it will keep kicking you into limitation, because that's like where the mind works. It like carves out a box and it's like, I'll work in here. And it has a hard time processing outside of a logical lock that it was conditioned or told to believe. And unless you get into like a physical direct experience and find things out for yourself, you'll be stuck in that box forever, because if you stay in logic, you'd never have an opportunity to test if anything is true. Something can be logical, and the logical argument can be totally sound, and the conclusion can be false. So unless you check, in reality, you don't know, and you're trapped forever. But it's like we've been seduced into higher levels of abstraction with every generation, to the point now where, a lot of us, our friendships exist in the ether online. But then it brings me back to the funny thing of what's going on with the game, because, like you said, we can judge what's good, what's bad, what's happening. To me, it's like it's happening because it's a game that we're going to like pop awake from. You know, it's like every day I have these pops of awakening, and it's like, oh, you know, the playing field is so skewed and so toxic that it's like put me into a level of consciousness I otherwise probably wouldn't experience. But like everybody's constantly told, you know, authority is the answer. Authority declares this is true. You know, the sun revolves around the earth, and that's what authority says. And if you never take a moment to say, how did they really know? Who did the test to say that this drug works? Who did the test? I didn't do it. I wasn't in the lab doing it. But like everybody's so specialized, you know, we're taught, oh, you have to trust that authority. But I mean, I know what goes on in medical schools. I'm not a doctor, but I've even coached doctors. And I know what happens to them emotionally and what they go through and how, you know, all their healing abilities are basically cut off in order for them to become a doctor. And then they have to stand and declare, you know, this is the proper treatment and this is the right thing to do because an authority over them told them, and it's like a Ponzi scheme. And meanwhile, you know, there's simple ways to cure cancer that don't require you to lose all your hair and be in pain and on painkillers. And it's just really kind of amazing. And when I can get out of the judgment, it's like fantastically incredible. But I get in the judgment a lot because I see that trap that people keep, and myself included, we keep trapping ourselves back into the logic, and expansion is beyond logic, it's beyond language, it's way beyond mind.
Well, I mean, and that's, we're right on top of it, because what it is, it's the word define. Now, anything means to take it away, so to take away fineness. Now, if someone is defining things for you, and you're not defining things on your own, because, of course, this is like a snowball effect, because the first time someone defines the tools that you start using to define everything else with, then you're now defining it based on how they define things. Like, for instance, let's talk about...
you're building on a false premise.
Exactly. And so, again, just to touch really briefly on the Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, you're dealing with basically two pair of shoes from the same designer in the same store. What choice is that? Like, that's not really a choice. And then, remember, but
Obama's got the stacks on, man. It's really cool, so I'm going to get the stacks.
Well, and then, listen, the carrot in front of the rabbit, per se, is promise for more jobs. Notice how the whole election is hinging on whether we can get more jobs. And I remember watching this interview with these rabbis, and they were saying, they ask, how can they get better jobs? Never asking, why am I working? You see, like there's another level. So, and then he finishes it, so we give them better jobs. Meaning that if they make us want something so bad that then when they finally give it to us, we're like, wait a minute, that's not exactly what I really wanted, or we want more after that, then we've gotten, again, nowhere. So, of course, in today's conversation, we're going to really talk about how to actually get somewhere, how to really expand into another level of yourself and what you really are. But it's going to take some real acceptance, though. That's the other thing about this, and that's why duality does always end this acceptance, because even though it's our responsibility, even if it's Nephilim, it's our responsibility. Even if it's whatever on this planet, it's our responsibility because it's our child, it's our creation. When we run away from that and say, that child is evil, basically, then you get, I'm just going to show the chain reaction of these thoughts. I'm not telling you what's right and what's wrong. I'm just going to say it eventually leads to this chosen child or chosen people idea, where God doesn't like all these other people, a.k.a. you don't like all these other people, but you have this special group that are doing what you like, and then you guys are the chosen group. This is termed Henoism. This is basically what humanity has gone into. They choose the God they want out of a pantheon of gods, especially we're all gods, but of course not by that term. I have to get into that later about what the word God really means, but to continue, you choose like a buffet what you want, and then you throw the rest away, never realizing that sometimes this bacteria, sometimes this darkness makes up the very materials and soil that is needed to grow the most splendid things. So it's also not understanding what the universe and understanding what the universe is really doing that's keeping us bottlenecked.
Right. Right, because we're so concerned with, the pretty picture and, fuck what happens for the process before and after, what it took to get there. And also, there's such a inauthenticity with that because, there's seasons. You're expecting someone to be in summertime gear, and it's the middle of winter, and it's snowing outside. We're in flux, things are flowing. And along with that drive for abstraction is also this drive for, some kind of abstract perfectionism where, you're going to reach some ending point where you finally arrived and you're perfect, and then you can retire. There's, this weird, again, with the carrot and stick thing, I feel like is always going on. And that reminds me, too, of a friend of mine who grew up in Russia, and she said it was a similar thing. Every time, the politicians were talking, they're like, in 5 years we're going to achieve perfect communism, and then 5 years would pass, and they're like, well, in 5 years we're going to surely achieve it, and it was just constantly pushed, 5 years more, 5 years more, and everybody just keeps getting, thrown around in this tumbler, but the fundamental, actuality of what's going on.
Savior stories. I think the epitome of that is the savior stories. Savior
right, I can't get out. I'm not a god. Someone has to save me. Right, I don't have power. I even heard this woman the other day. She was speaking against Romney, some teacher who Romney apparently was very rude to, and she's like, I didn't get into teaching to have power. I got into teaching to make a difference. And I'm like, well, how are you going to make a difference if you have no power?
Right. And
what are you saying?
Definition issues, using the same word to denote many things.
Are you talking about force or power, and know the difference?
And they're right, and there is no difference because in the English language these two words blur. This is called babble, by the way. There's the actual term for this, and the actual act of it is recorded in the Old Testament of the Bible with an entity in the sky saying, let us go down and confuse them. So there are, if you want to see the extraterrestrial component, there are actual documentations that at least half of the world believes in, if not at least a quarter or a third of the world believes in, that says that there was an extreme confusion with our level of communication. And, of course, that's my master's study personally is etymology, but our disturbance of our language of communication creates this interruption or basically this rip in time of us not understanding things and having to take time to learn things and having gaps in our memory and having breaks in our DNA or our information or our program code, et cetera, whatever you want to call it. So the reality is with us is that we have to go at it from another level, though, because if you tell people, well, look, you got to change your language, that's going to be very difficult. There were many conquerors that actually tried to do that. Even Russia would go in and conquer territories and then make people stop using their language and start speaking Russian, and become a part of the bloc, as I always say, the red square, or they're over there circumambulating a black cube. So this whole idea of being inside of the box, or what they're now calling the light in the box, is out of here. And I'll tell you also, just to tell you in regards to what you were saying earlier, remember there are people now, human beings, already experiencing the advanced levels of being fully harmonic. Let it not be confused that even though the masses have not chosen to accept that, yes, here on this planet, it doesn't mean there's not a myriad of beings that have already been here and expanded that have already figured this out. And so that's a frequency. Now remember, everything in these planes is separated by frequencies, harmonics, which is lights, etc. That's how things are separated, so it doesn't all just pack on top of itself and realize at that moment all is self. It's separated into these frequencies or wavelengths. So when you can emit that frequency and wavelength, then you harmonically start to meet those individuals. They just pop up out of nowhere. And the interesting part is the faster your vibratory frequency is, your current, the faster you can manifest things. So now let's get into this now. Now, manifesting things. Now, it's very difficult because we have a manifestation power. That's really what Earth is. It's a fertile field. When we speak, it's like a straight line into a fertile field. It comes to manifestation. But what happens if you're speaking? Now, first of all, this language is not the holy language, but if you're speaking something into an infertile field, Now, of course, everyone's kind of unlocked that the earth is a matrix. It's a womb. So what happens inside of a womb? Creation. So anything that you speak out into possibly an infertile field is either not going to happen, take very long to happen, or happen but be somehow distorted. Because in an infertile womb of a woman, that it will either be no child or the child will have abnormalities, etc. So we have to understand this universal connection with all of our knowledge and what we're experiencing if we're to gain bearing here, meaning that we have to have a system that allows us to connect what we're experiencing from this external level to also our mental level and then also our spiritual level. And this is actually how we're introducing a system now, especially within the resistance, of how to analyze yourself. But you'll soon see, of course, how it all starts to blur. What you eat starts to affect your mind, starts to affect your soul. So this is why that at any point, if you decide to slip up, and that's why when we're thinking of the power also, everyone has to understand that it's like putting a child in a 747 and telling a child to, and they don't know how to fly, activating light vehicles.
Right.
The power in our body.
I've actually seen over the years, like I had locked in time codes that like my consciousness wouldn't allow me to see things, and it was unveiled to me in a very specific order so that I wouldn't, so like the freakiness of the enormity of it. And I'm not trying to say this like I've arrived somewhere. I mean, it's continuing to happen. I'm sure it'll happen again today. But it's like it's being revealed in a very intelligent, sensitive way, and it's like also to help deal with the fact that my limited mind, balks at some of it. Like the mind is like, if all of this is true, I'm just going to disintegrate and I won't have a job anymore and I'll be nobody. And it doesn't understand that it can also be part of the process yet. So it's like learning. My mind I've really had to work with it because, I got a bachelor's degree from Yale University, so like mind-heavy existence I had in my youth, just a lot of academic shit. And I've had to really talk it down. I'm like, it's okay. Nobody's trying to get rid of you. The mind is necessary. We need it, and it helps with discernment and plans and organization, but it's the secretary and not the CEO. And I feel like colonization, again, with the abstraction thing, is like trying to make the mind believe it's the CEO, and it's trying to run the whole thing, and all it's meant to do is like just sort the mail in the mailroom. It doesn't have to do much more than that. And it creates, you can see a parallel in the behavior of like, quote unquote, white cultures, in colonization processes, that, there's like this meddling in everything, and it's like, you're not really helping mind, colonizer, just back down. And like, you can help, but, you got to recognize that the being or the object or the person you're helping has its own intelligence. Like, the womb has intelligence. And the mind thinks like it's not only separate but like above, and it just creates a lot of suffering and anxiety in people,
For sure. That's the separation again. In moving into just where the solutions are for this, because we definitely talk about a lot of where the frequencies are. I think people are more concerned because it's no mystery here that money is driving people. And, of course, many people would hate to admit it. And then you have all these very spiritual people on the planet, and when you take away their money, all of a sudden everything is going to change as far as their spirituality because they've already experienced that. But what do you do about it? Like, this is, of course, the ones who are willing to go into those states of thoughts and find solutions rather than going into those states of thoughts and getting scared. Just like you go in that state of thought, you find someone in the corner, and you're like, hey, why are you in here in the corner shivering? The person says, I'm scared of the economy falling. And it's like, well, why don't you just get out of here and let me figure out the economy situation then, rather than you sitting here just being scared. This is what I find when I go into these thought fields to see what's going on with humanity's thinking. So we have to realize that
and I just want to interject really quickly. I just want to interject before we leave the scenario you just described. Part of what I do in my coaching is to help people who have a part of them stuck there. And I'm good at it because I have so many parts that are stuck and cut up in pieces. So, like, basically it's like soul retrieval. But I know a lot of techniques that I teach people that are fairly simple so that you can eventually do it for yourself. But sometimes if you have a lot of trauma in this incarnation, it can be really difficult to do the step that you just talked about. Like, come on, let's get out of here, let's ascend, because a lot of people who've or really universally I've seen people who've had trauma. So when we talk about popping out of like consensus reality, their experience of popping out was through that trauma. It was terrifying, and sometimes, a lot of times, like life or death situations, whether it was abuse or what have you. So they have a lock on jumping out of consensus reality. So now when you come with this sort of New Age stuff like, oh, let's ascend, there's a lock because people who've been traumatized, they know what it's like to step outside, but it's in the face of a quote-unquote evil victimizer victim thing. So I've been noticing in a lot of people I've worked with that people who are really expansive, like, don't want to go there, even though I'm like, but it's okay. My experience says no, you know?
Well, I mean, even deeper than that, you have people that can't even understand what you're saying, even if you...
Yeah, and I can't. I used to try to tell them, and then I was like, Michelle, just what are you doing? It's between them and the universe. Let it go.
Well, I talked about this in regards to, this extreme optimism. It really has nothing to do with optimism, to tell you the truth, because what happens is this is where the challenge, it sits back onto the lap of the individuals who are so close to breaking through. And let me just explain this. There are people in this world that they could be deaf and blind, or missing hands, or born with part of the brain even missing, and then this prevents them from even understanding or realizing what you're talking about at all whatsoever. So instead of just taking these other group of individuals who just have some psychological problems, or I wouldn't even say just have, but have psychological problems or sexual abuse problems, we can also even go another level up of individuals who have even permanent problems when they're here on Earth. So I'll tell you where the challenge lies, though. The challenge is that the power that is associated with a fully activated human can completely perfect any other field. In the ancient books, it says it can make a crippled climb trees, meaning that the power and the ability of an activated human can actually rearrange a person's distorted field. This is also called the panuncia. But the challenge is, again, because obviously that person they say was running around doing this, they made a whole book in a religion about, but to show people, again, that this is not a game, that there is an ability to do that, but you have to be so compassionate, and this is why you have to kill the evil thing, the good and evil thing. You have to be so compassionate to touch those, reach those fields of your consciousness inside of a physical body that already has what I call a phi-based governor. If you understand that the body and the five senses, the five fingers, there's a governor on the body. So to transcend that is where the actual abilities, and still remain physical while you do this, is where the abilities are to cure the individuals that you're not going to do any talking with them. First of all, here's another thing. We're talking about spirituality. Spirituality was very seldom communicated through talking. Spirituality is communicated through touch and other higher senses, right? So this is a new thing, us trying to use language to define the unknown. I mean, come on. But this is another thing I really wanted people to feel optimistic about, is that even though some people say there was ultra ancient races that were highly sentient, and then some people say, it was just recently, and some people say it's now, but I'll just tell you this. There is enough knowledge and information now in our world, despite whatever happened in the past and what is going on in the future, for us to utilize the abilities and the knowledge that has been given, especially through the internet, information about crystals, frequencies, cymatics, etc., for us to really get ourselves in line and online. However, to do that, which is, remember, there's the hinging point to this whole conversation. To do that, you have to be able to summon an extremely large amount of willpower. Now, again, that's why I was trying to get into this conversation, we don't have to do it now, about current and currency, and how even if you don't have any money in the house, it seems to affect at times how strong you feel about going out and helping someone. Am I right or am I wrong? But see, right, especially the spiritual people, where they won't address this. So they don't really understand how their physical money, their current, is connected to their spiritual current inside of their body. What are chakras? What are kundalini? Kundalini is a coiled up disc of all of your information and the other individuals on your biorhythms information. That's what it is. But it's coiled up because that's how you store information. But to unlock it is, like you were saying, well, there's a time code on many of the things that I'm being explained, because if they just unlock it all at one point, it would be like a rushing of energy from the base of your body all the way up through your spine into the top of your head. And hopefully it circles back around, because if it pops out, then everyone will be talking to you, or you'll be talking, and it'll seem like everyone doesn't even understand what you're saying, or that you're almost crazy to them. You see what I mean? Like, we have to talk about, these Eastern traditions about opening up Kundalini and the vast vehicles of who we are is not a new topic. It's just we have explaining to men that have walked their whole lives, women that have walked their whole lives doing this. We jump in 2, 3 years, and we imagine we obtained the black belt. It's not like that. Right.
And also, I think that as much as there's wonderful things that have come out of the Western world, Europe and America and so forth, with the yoga community, there's just so many grains of misinformation, and it's kind of the visual thing here. Yoga is a pose that you do like a gymnast, and and it's just kind of constantly reinforced, even though everybody has a lot of workshops about how that's not the case. That people are drawn to that, and it's a wonderful thing to have a physically fit body and all that. Like I've been practicing yoga myself a long time. I love asana practice, but it's like, again, confusing the words. Like, yoga and asana postures is not the same thing. Asana posture is a part of yoga, right? So people are like kind of ping-ponging around inside a fake version of yoga, trying to figure out what all the hype is about. And meanwhile, what they're experiencing is unspoken ego games, which get real evil, as we saw with, what was that clothing line, where that girl murdered the other girl, and did you hear about this?
No, I haven't heard about it yet, but I
yeah,
definitely...
Lululemon. There was a Lululemon outlet where one of the employees, or I don't know if it was their administrative office, but one of the employees murdered another employee. And, and there's this whole, smiley face on the new age, and then people with, they basically take their unprocessed stuff and just push it down deeper to create a false, enlightenment face. But it's creating a false face without even knowing what the enlightenment is, So
at least they named it Lulu. Okay, just so you understand that everything is, of course, just a step on the ladder. Yoga, ayahuasca, Jesus. All of these can easily become the problem, as they could also become the solution.
Right. That's what I definitely found. Yeah.
Luna knowledge is from the moon. It's Luna, meaning that the first step on the ladder, and that's why all of the religions that are mainly in this world, the angel that is announcing the birth of the individual who is special in that religion, whether it's the angel Jibril or the angel Gabriel announcing either Muhammad or Jesus, is the angel of the moon, because it's that step on the ladder, and the symbolism even bears witness, but it's that step on the ladder. So if some people, they just make it to that level, which is still more expansive to them than being on the ground, basically.
Right.
And then they stay there in that lunar station or in that mansion of their father, and then they go out into the other expanses of this entire system. So this happens. And so I don't know if it's a positive or things that many people are dancing around the yoga but not fully getting involved, because when you get fully involved, then yoga turns to a ritual. It turns into a binding in with specific entities rather than just a glance in, cobra poses, and then I'm like, okay, I got the yoga thing down bad. It's still all about prana. So am I going to use my path all my life to just develop more yoga positions, or am I going to do basic yoga? I personally do a basic yoga that gets the body pretty much warmed up, and then I'm out of that station and into another enhancement of myself. Now, remember, the other thing is you will revisit that station. Some people have this idea that once certain parts of spirituality or whatever, they'll never return again. That's not what Kundalini does. It's supposed to cycle. You're not supposed to stay in your crown chakra. And this is where you
and it's like a spiraling where you spiral around, and each time you revisit a point in the circle, it's like from a new dimension because your wisdom has expanded. So I keep going back to different forms of the same mistake until I pull the root out, and then it's a new thing yet again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm the same way. I used to do Ashtanga yoga full on for like 10 years. And then I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. Why do I have to, because there's this real emphasis on the physical practice, which I needed when I started because my energy was so scattered, and it grounded me really well, and it served me. But then I was like, something else is calling me, and I like beat myself up for a while over it, and I was like, well, it's not working for me anymore. These are some new tools, and I went in a more of a personal direction where I'm creating my own thing. But I keep going back to it, and now, I just do a more basic practice just for the, the enjoyment of it. But, I would rather spend an hour and a half meditating,
Yeah, I mean, that's the major thing. It's in the bag now. If someone needs you to speak on it, if someone needs you to do it, then you can do it, even professionally. And then the other thing is that you gain more abilities. It sharpens up that other ability, and that's the other secret about the planet.
Yeah, well, it, unlocked a whole bunch of stuff that was happening even, 10 years ago. I remember some things that I see now that one of my teachers was trying to show me just about the relationship with the body and the game you play about, I can't control my balance. Yes, you can. It's just align everything up. And there's a real game we play with ourselves because, like you were just talking about earlier, if someone is fully, they have all their levels in one point in present time, they're fully present, they could totally move mountains. But as you develop the ability to get there, you have parts of you that get afraid and will play a game and stop the process. And I feel that a lot of that is because in the collective unconscious we still have this crucifixion story, and everybody has this story that if you shine, you're going to get shot down. And maybe a lot of people are over that. I don't feel like I'm over that. I feel like
it's also once you stay in the crown chakra for a decent period of time, and I've definitely been through these cycles myself, and the crown chakra is a lot to do with solitude, but still connected with everything. Like the sun is called soul or by itself, but it's still connected to everything. But then when you come back down to the root chakra, or basically hell, and then you start getting bombarded by, a lot of these energies and a lot of the things that you regret. You regretted and became what you thought was the reason on why you left the root chakra. But that's not the thing entirely. As you were saying, is when you go into higher states of consciousness, then you have a chance to revisit what you would think is the lower states of consciousness when there's really no such thing. You can now distribute or plant things that you've understood and fully realized into other vessels, humans, into beings, fertile fields, etc., and then it will eventually grow up, and that's, of course, how everything grows upwards, and then you will enjoy its fruits, its ideas, or whatever it is at some point. This is just a simple cycle. Our entire existence depends upon farmer-like skills. That's why humans were never really more than that. It was only when going into the United States and going into America where pretty much everyone dumped off all their farming and fabricating responsibilities onto foreign people. Just because they wanted to, like the king. Now then, the one with the great mind.
We're all house slaves.
Is the individual who's doing all the work. Notice how in our reality, the one who has the brilliant mind is getting paid way more than the guy who's bringing in the fruits and the vegetables. So this says something about it. But what I would also like to do, though, is see how the metamorphosis is taking place where you notice how, again, with the Barack Obama and the Mitt Romney, where some people are like, they're realizing voting for one or the other, how about I just not vote? That's what they're really saying to each other. Because here's another thing that happens with this whole magical part of things. Bindings, oaths, rituals, and pacts. When you actually pledge allegiance or say that I'm with them, then you get the lucky job of inheriting their karma, the scapegoat,
right.
The fault.
That's why I'm not voting.
Right. So even to sign that bill and to put your agreements in there, you're agreeing with things that you're not even informed about. I mean, they don't even have to tell you because you've already signed it. And this is the magical part.
And again, because people are we're so fractured and disconnected within ourselves, a lot of people have lost the ability to see with the third eye, some people call it the first eye, and see what that contract is on another plane. And it's just like, I'm just voting. This is just, they see it from within the game and not from the standpoint of eternal time and their soul's perspective. And so, it's just really interesting how it's it's sort of unfolding. I'm just noticing the time, though, so I just want to check in with you and see. We have 50 minutes left, as in 50, and we have 5 callers. So,
okay. Well, let's take some calls.
Let's take some calls, and then what I'll just contract with you is, like, if we don't get to the last part, which I feel like is really super important about, okay, probably a lot of people, and we'll find out from the callers, I'm sure, know the basic ballpark that we've discussed, but I'm really interested in starting discussions about what's next. Like, we know that the ship is sinking, so what's our new ship going to look like? But I'll go to the callers now, and then if we can't get back to that, maybe we'll just do another show.
Okay.
Okay, we gave Tom the right of first refusal. So, Tom, are you still there, and do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm here. Question. I kind of have a couple of things I'd like to say.
That would be great. Question, comments, ideas?
Well, I just want to start out by saying bear with me for a second. After that first part of the show here, I've had so much energy coursing through my body, I've been shaking. So with Sevan's permission, I'd kind of like to announce this project that I've been working on in conjunction with the information that the Resistance has provided me all summer. Is that okay, Sevan?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, brother. Do what you do.
Well, basically, talking about all the stuff that you guys have been talking about all show, I've been following the Resistance and really had a chance to take all the information that's been provided and the body work and the mind work and the soul work, and I've really got that Kundalini energy flowing and just been practicing eating the live food and the raw food every day. And I know Sevan's got a little one on the way here coming up, which congratulations, by the way. I kind of feel like I am about to birth something too. I'm going to be taking all the information I can with Sevan's audio and in conjunction with my video cymatics, frequencies. I'm going to compile that all together into kind of like a little wake-up experience for people. I'm going to take that and with my friends on the company, and I'm going to have a hat design. I'm going to pay for that to get released with the USB of the video, and the video will send people to the Kickstarter platform where they'll see this whole project that I know Sevan has been trying to raise the money for down to wake some people up with this information down in Costa Rica. And I'd like to really basically start to raise that money so we can get all these people activated and all living on this gift that we've provided.
Well, that sounds great, and I would invite you guys when you do get that on, going, let us know, and we'll publicize it through the Monkeys Are Really People network, and I'll put it, out on all my accounts everywhere. So keep us informed about that project.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope you like the sounds of that, Sevan.
For sure. Like I said, we definitely got to get together. We've got to talk about things and see exactly what we can do for people to kind of spearhead the entire thing as fast as possible. And that's just the main focus, especially right now, is taking all this knowledge and information, like you said, and then compiling it into something that everyone could benefit off of and getting that to distribute it to people ASAP. So for sure. There's a lot of things that I'm working on over here too, Tom, and I'm definitely going to fill you in on those things. So we'll see what the collaboration can definitely bring. I'm sure it's something that's going to be vibrant for all of us.
Man, thanks for giving me a wanted to get that to me. But
yeah, Tom, you're coming in and out. Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Your connection was dropping out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to let you guys get to some other callers. Thanks for letting me have a minute there.
Okay, great cheers. Show. Thank you for listening in tonight. Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay. 310 area code. Hello?
Yes, hello?
Hello. Michael?
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hi. Michelle, Sevan. I'm getting a little feedback because I got the computer on and everything too. Can you? Am I coming in clear?
You're fine. Yeah, you're fine on this end. It's not coming through. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, it's a good show, and I wanted to, when you gave me the who was going to be, the guest and the headliner and everything for the show, and the opportunity to come in, with the sponsorship for it, I jumped at the chance, and it's an amazing show. I wasn't going to, call in, just kind of work the switchboard, not the switchboard, but the chat room behind the scenes, but a few things were said that I wanted to jump in on and see about getting a response or a thought in that regard. You had mentioned, Sevan, about, oh man, I took a note on it. I went outside, so let me grab the note just a second.
Okay, take your time.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, you know what? While you get your note, I'm just going to tell. Okay.
Well, no, go ahead. I'm
we
sorry.
also have a question from the chat room. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me just introduce this, and then maybe you can jump on the chat. You had mentioned something about infertile field, and like everything is. How can I put it? Everything is disconnected with the energy and the magnetism on the earth and the people, regardless if they're in America or in Europe or north or south, east or west. It's a disconnect with the energy on the grids just of the entire planet. And I wanted to, because I've written this book. It's called God's Turkey, or How I Found One of the Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. Kind of long title, but yeah, I found one of the seven wonders of the world, and I think the reason why everything is such disarray, disconnect, while we'll do hundreds of things to try to be successful, and some of us accomplish things in different degrees, but I think the reason why most of everything is separate and disconnect is because we're living in the wrong place in our minds. We're trying to connect ourselves with being somewhere that actually it's not. Is that making any sense? If you can just imagine.
Well, yeah, let me first say, disconnection is like a disease. It can be cured several ways. Because if you wait on something else to fix itself, then you'll be waiting on it for a long time. Like if we say, oh, the Illuminati is causing me not to go forward, then now we have to wait on Illuminati to say, okay, you guys can go forward now, which probably according to what the Illuminati are supposed to be like, they would never do. So I would also not like to say that the Earth is configured in a certain way that is allowing it to be disconnected. It's not really disconnected. It's more short-circuited. That would be the easiest way to explain what's going on with the energy of an infertile field. Now, an infertile field, of course, is a field that it has. If you were to govern organics, and this is how you have to look at everything, plastic even has an atom in it, so it is organic to a certain nature, but there is basically a caste system in the elements, meaning that plastic is like on the lowest end, so it is the most infertile field versus on the higher fields it's probably dark matter, which is, you put anything into it and it'll, any kind of seed or electron into it, it'll metamorphosize something. So what happens is that in the way that the cities and things are configured at times, if we don't understand how to move around ley lines within our house and to do simple dowsing to see what is the magnetic field around our house, yes, there is at times that field that we're in that when we speak or we want to manifest something for ourselves into it, it doesn't build us up enough. Now, let me explain to you also in a very simple way. Generally, if you can start to be in an environment, like let's say for instance, if you're in the jungle and you just sit there for a moment and maybe you're in a tent or some type of mosquito net where the bugs won't start bothering you, but if you can sit there, you'll actually feel there's a resonance and a connection between electricity that's coming from the ground floor of the actual forest. So what happens is that in a city, that the layers in between you and that first level of organic sediment is thick. So in order for you to put your roots completely into it, which are what's coming out of your feet, that's why you see the veins running through the feet, and then they run into the ground like roots. So, but in order for you to connect with that, it takes an extreme amount of grounding. And this grounding comes, of course, from the chakra that's in the center of the body, the Muladhara chakra. So this governs how high you can get because, while maintaining, what's the word that I can use? Not crazy. You see, if you go into high chakras and you shoot all the energy up there and you happen to get stuck there, you may not be able to connect what you're saying in the what you're seeing in that reality to this reality. And so what happens in this is this is not a positive thing. People should understand that. You awaken chakras gradually, but the first thing to do is to understand the system, understand the blockages, et cetera, that are going on within you. And then what happens ultimately is that you start pushing yourself towards fertile fields. Now, if you were looking at yourself as just a nomad, the direction that you would be going is where things are more abundant. If you happen to be in a desert, you're going to be looking for water. So these same instincts do you operate like that on a spiritual level too?
Right.
Go ahead. I'm just saying.
I was saying right, but in what I was speaking like a what would you say, like a transcendental thought projection or like mind projection using say for instance like a focal point, like in terms of say religion where they have Qibla or something, and everyone in that religion will focus their attention to say the Kaaba in Mecca, or some people will focus their attention to Jerusalem over in what they call the Middle East. What I'm saying in what I touch on a bit in the book is that these places where people are focusing their attention have been superimposed on different locations. For instance, Jerusalem now in the Middle East is not where ancient Jerusalem really was or still is, actually.
Right.
And
let me finish that just really briefly, Michael, because ancient Jerusalem was inside. Ancient Jerusalem was never an external place.
Oh, no, sir, it was. It was actually an external place.
Pardon? Listen, it's another thing, again, if you understand the gods of this world, and this is why if you look up some of what Oberon Zell is talking about, these are like wizards like Harry Potter, people that do things that me and you would never do. What he'll say to you is that when he was younger, if he understood what he knew now and what is really going on in the spiritual world, he wouldn't have did a lot of the things that he actually has done. The explanation of this is the God of this world, people need to start identifying. When you actually make a communication, you start thinking of grids and you start thinking of programming grids, you're now in a juggernaut's territory, meaning that you didn't just embark on something that they didn't want to control in the greatest levels. You actually embarked in the territory of the individuals on this dimension that control this dimension. So thus, at any point, if you get confused to what is communicating, who's the first level of communication? It is the moon. The moon is a refractor of the light that comes from this planet. Who governs the moon? God. Who is God? God is Tin. He's a masculine God. The symbol Tin means just the male phallic symbol and his testicles. This is a testament. There's a lion God running around the planet, seeking who it can devour. So in its array, which is under the swastika, backwards and forwards, Eastern and Western, Nazis and Aryans, but blue-face Aryans. The first thing that people need to realize in the spiritual field like this is that just because you want things to be a certain way, just because you want to move around certain things and do certain things, you will indeed earn that. There is nothing about this universe that doesn't want to teach every single being here that if you really do achieve something, you achieve being able to govern these forces and to do this, you will be great indeed. So we can do that, though. This is what the most interesting part about it is. Out of all this, what we should learn is that we're already configured as beings that had been able to accomplish that. But I'll tell you the truth. It was our parents. This thing is a tree. We are the seeds from it. Every seed has an opportunity to grow up to the tree, but some seeds fall by the wayside. This means that in the example of the parable about what happens to the seeds, some seeds don't fall on fertile soil, some seeds get blown over on the roadside, some seeds get stored away and never get planted at all. This is the idea of what happens to each individual human as they're going through their expansion. Some seeds happen different things. So if you happen to be, which I believe you are, one of those individuals that you're growing up into a tree, by all means, look at the tree. Meaning, we have to get to a level where we push away the phi, we push away the pyramid, and we push away the pentagrams and the actual hexagrams. Because in the reality of all this, it's still within. The implosion is how you travel through the astral plane. To implode your body, to make it a pine cone, to make it a two interlacing pine cones, which is basically an hourglass. This is the Orion battle cry, as they call it. This is to actually implode yourself so that when you're facing the most ultimate danger to yourself, which you may think is extinction, you have the ability to go into another part of your timeline or your reality. We call that death and reincarnation. However, why we've already figured out death and reincarnation, the Egyptians figured that out, Commitans figured that out, we still have another task that's even beyond that. So why most people are still playing around with earth systems and pyramids and geometry from Pythagoras, we have a trapezoid on the dimension, meaning we have obtuse angles on the dimension. We have beings that don't conform to the geometry of what is generally in this world. Now, how do you know the building blocks of this reality? And this is where the ideas of the matrix came from. Water and light bear both a tetrahedron. They are not straight, though. This is the deepest knowledge that you can have about spirituality and who's giving it to you. Nothing that nature generates is in a straight line. Nature is organic. Organic begins with an O. The ones who use the straight lines, meaning the ones who move in angles, they are the counterfeiters. They give you a symbol that is drawn with straight lines, like when they draw that Star of David. And when they draw that pentagram, they draw with straight lines, not with convex, meaning actually bulged or humped like it's supposed to be. So this is where you get Lucifer and the Sataniel components. They are counterfeiters. And this is why, even when you look in China and you look how they've been oppressing those people long before they've been oppressing us in the United States. Remember, China is already functioning like most of the world is scared to function like. They call that the V for Vendetta Society. So when do we see the Chinese as us too, in that we want to emancipate them?
Well, yeah, that's exactly like that is exactly the point, is to get the people, like the everything that you're talking about on an astral plane or another dimensional level, multi-dimensional level for that matter, it still has its expression and root inside of the human vessel. Like the entire universe and all the elements are contained within each and every person, like man, woman, or child, regardless of age. So the point of focus is to know the things that were in the records of the antiquity that were actually, see, the disconnect comes when people start to conjecture and say, well, Jerusalem as a physical city never existed, when yes, in fact it did. They just have changed the maps. The cartography has been forged and bootlegged. Now people are thinking that what actually was a physical place for focus and spiritual cultivation never existed, or it's in another part of the world. We're bringing it back to where it is so people can see and look in the records and say, okay, it says it was built like this, it stood over here by this water, and then when you can see it where it is now, then the people on the planet can refocus and become all those things in the metaphysical and high level that you spoke of. But until the physical dynamic is put back into its rightful order, the physical, when you start to stand on the planet Earth before you levitate into outer space, then you'll see where we really are so that people can become who they truly can be. Like when you had spoken something about God, that only comes about from the man who created the Egyptian Empire, which happened to be in Central America and then later in South America. It has nothing to do with North Africa in the beginning of the creation of that black Egyptian empire. And that is where the concept of God and all this deity and worship came from, is in that dispensation. From a man, a black man, way back then. But who knows that? There are a few that do, and those are the ones that are successful. You mentioned something about, well, how all these evil people seem to be so successful. You said they get other people to kill for them to keep their hands clean. Well, it's something to do with that. But see, those people know where they are. They know where the map is, and they can walk outdoors and know where the real stuff is. The other convex side of that is everyone else doesn't know. So they're looking here to get something accomplished that doesn't exist there, so it'll never be accomplished no matter how hard they try or pray or gamble or crime or whatever. They're not going to be successful until they know where all of these things that set up the foundation of this civilization are originally. You understand what I'm saying? People talk about the chakra system, the 7 chakras. That comes way back, over 23,000 years ago from the Central American area. When they talk about in the Bible the 7 nations, when the God, you can put in quotes if you want, but when the God gave the children of Israel their inheritances, it was 7 nations. And those 7 nations had banners, flags, and those flags were colors. Now, by the time that, and like I said, this is thousands, like 23,000 some odd years ago, before what you call the East Indians got that information, it's like even in East Indian tradition, Maya is now illusion. But the Maya here, the black people that were now called Maya, were the black Egyptians that started the civilization here in the Americas. Those are the flag colors. And now they're saying, well, it's a chakra system, and it goes into something that you can sit and meditate and believe. Belief is fine, and I don't want to talk about people's beliefs, but all these beliefs and understandings have a root, and that root is in something that you can see with your eyes, touch, taste, and whatever your senses are. These are real things that you have to be able to tangibly know first. Like your feet are on the earth. Until people, levitate, you can go anywhere with your mind, but first your mind has to be correct. So, yeah, I'm not taking up a lot of time on the show. I appreciate Michelle having you on, and hopefully you guys will come back and do another show. But, yeah, appreciate your time.
No doubt. I mean,
Sevan, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, and then I'll give you like a few minutes, but we have several callers, and I do want to try to get as many people in as possible, so as succinctly as you can. Yeah.
I'll definitely respond to that just really briefly. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the brother for giving us his insight. I think what we're really dealing with here is that truth, again, is only one thing. So if you're pursuing something, that's why I say some people come into the knowledge of the matrix by entirely different means. If you're pursuing something, but then you just get all the way through it, you discover everything that's about it, it'll connect you with the rest of what you need to know. And so I definitely feel that coming from the brother, that he's discovered something that has allowed him to definitely center and focus himself. But I would definitely say that many individuals have come into different ways of doing that, and now what it's time for us to do is to get that knowledge to everyone so they can figure out which one is going to work for them.
Yeah, and the other aspect is that no matter which one you do, none of them are going to be fully complete. I mean, I need to learn. Some people are very good at, intellectual explanation and putting this stuff into words. Other people are really good with body work. I have a friend who does body work, and she can, transport you to past lifetimes, barely touching you. There's people who have different skills. But, in order for me to process and grow on all the chakra levels, I need both. My intellect needs this sort of validation and orientation I get from, like, comparing notes with other people, but then my body needs to do certain things. I have to process my emotions, you know, like some people are very good at processing emotions, but they're not so good at talking about it. They need to do dance therapy. Like, there's going to be so much work to do that everybody who has skills should just come to the table, and everyone's going to have an audience, and it's going to help, and we're going to just, like, cross-fertilize each other.
We would need to do something in immortality. I always say to people, you know, to keep this thing going every day, you have to realize we got to be doing something. You're immortal. So.
Right. Well, and you know what? Let me pause for 1 second. So we had a caller, Kim, was asking a question about how we tap into ourselves. How do we figure out our program codes, like, that aren't serving us, and how do we create higher vibrations? I'm sure the process is different for each person, but she's asking you to comment on it. The one thing I'm thinking, though, is that we may want to just do a whole other show on that, because that's kind of the end piece. So that may be, like, the second show is, like, how do you shift, and then the third show is, like, what are we shifting for? You know, like, what's the dream? Like, what is the end game here? Why are we here? So I think we might need to do a couple more shows. So I'm going to go to a caller and just hope that Kim will forgive me that we're going to put that on the table. Who's been holding the longest? Let me check. Okay. Area code 561. Are you there? Area code 561. Do you have a question? Okay, they might be on mute. All right, next caller. Hello, area code 803. Do you have a question? 803? Hello? Oh, hello, area code 803? Hello? Sevan, you can still hear me at least, right?
I can hear you. You
know, some of these people may have, sometimes people call in. Okay, here's one with a question. Okay, hang on 1 second. Area code 202, are you there?
Yes, I am. Wholeness.
Okay.
Wholeness.
As always.
Welcome.
So much to say, but I think about, like the brother said, when you deal with the root, like at the root of it. And what I keep coming back to is the idea of energy and consciousness. Is there ever a time when energy was not? Is there ever a time when consciousness was not? And for me, in my mind, that starts the first point of division. To make it make sense when I'm talking about energy and consciousness, when people say, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I say the idea, because that blows open the ballpark on that question. Well, what consciousness came up with that particular thing and then decided to make a shell and make a yolk and make, you know, the entire process and everything else? But it's the idea. When people talk about the gods, Odin and Thor, what idea do they serve? You know, what idea in the universe, like what is their position? Like what reason does it exist? And I think when we deal with the ideas and the reasons, the absolute standard, the idea is why things are. You know what I mean? The reason why the sun exists and it functions the way it does and the earth and everything else. When we start to deal with the ideas, we start to tap into it. You start to see the, you know, it's like this was under my nose the whole time? Like it was all right here? I mean, and then you feel stupid and you feel, well, I know, I feel stupid and feel depressed. It's like, man, I have shamed this great organic work that's been concerned for me consistently and helping me and helping me. And what do I do now? Do I even deserve your things? I was thinking about that the other day when they talk about the veil of Isis. It's like, okay, just for the idea, if she removes her veil and shows you what she's really capable of, just the feminine essence of the universe, just that aspect, shows you what she can really do, will you still want her? Will you still want to be with her like you said you would when you first got started on the path? You know what I mean? So, you know, and it's the same thing like with with your wife, your lady. It's like, you know, she'll play her games because she wants to show you everything that she is, but she can't because she knows you can't handle it. So that brings me to the point of when we start to talk about, well, we want to know this and we want to know that, and then you get a glimpse, and the first thing you feel is that fear in your stomach. It's real.
In the stomach too. Notice where the fear. Notice where the fear too. When you feel it, you feel it in your stomach, right by the umbilical cord, because it shows you the connection that you have with the universe and how the universe is responsible for those feelings. And it's like, of course, there's no disconnection at all. Of course, man, I'm listening to you definitely build, brother, and man, I can definitely say the buddy is immense.
Your teachings have helped me strive to change my life. That current that's coming through this brother right here, if anybody's listening, take heed. It's not a game. And that's what I'm going to say. It's not a game.
Right.
Like, it's not a game. Like, so, okay, and my main question was this. So, like, if I held a strobe light to my forehead and that effect that it would have on the eyes, like, I'm getting that now. You know what I mean? Like, I got in the ocean, got out of the ocean, I looked up, and everything was, like, pulsating. Everything was pulsating. Like, I looked at the bird flying by, and I could see, like, this little, you know, like, pulsating aura around it. You know what I mean? I looked at the rock. I picked up a rock, and I could see, like, a slower-moving aura around it. And I'm wondering, like, what that is, because it's like being able to be in two worlds, like, I need some coordinates and some bearing with that. Because I can see stuff all the time, and I actually have to make myself not see it to go operate in 3D.
Right. Yes. And that can take up a lot of energy, and I sometimes even wonder, because I have that problem too, and I feel like it may be another layer of a game I put on myself as another one of those locks, like to not come out of the closet.
I don't know if it's necessarily a problem. Like, I mean, I used to, when I opened my eyes, I used to look at the white wall and see these, it looked like
lines,
cogs and wheels spinning around. But I started realizing that was the confirmation every day that this thing just keeps you awake. You realize that this thing is not, if people were seeing through your eyes, then they will actually be charged up off what you're seeing. Let me show you this. You notice how I was noticing the entire concept of the Kundalini, the prana, the entire thing, because I'm always trying to sum it up just like you are, is if you have an internal thing going on, meaning you're so connected to yourself that even a flower whispering by, a slight breeze from something allows your energy to start turning on as if you're in the greatest level of attraction. I'm going to show you this. That's the key. These are doing these. I'm not giving you the key to the whole thing or whatever, because there's never any keys to the whole thing. But exactly, it was just the wholeness. And once you realize that, then you realize what we do from here is anything. So that's some people always asking, well, what do I do next? Well, anything, my friend. Now you're free indeed. It's almost like, you know, some people call that when you've been in prison long, and then you get out, and then you're like, what do they call it? They have a special word for that, where the person is basically
institutionalized.
When they're free, institutionalized, okay? And this is afraid to run free in things. Now, that's why, of course, we were all built in this thing together, because by all means, someone has to understand that to build the bridges. Like, in fact, to tell you the truth, it's not about bridge building, it's about being the bridge. Bridge building is almost like, just that term, and to say it like that is almost like giving the responsibility to someone else. When we take this responsibility that we have and we understand that this is what the world wants, it wants the truth. So honestly, what that would look like on another dimension would be something that was a seed that needed to be planted, and everything wanted to receive that seed. But there's still this space in between, which creates our purpose, which is how well we can actually plant that seed. Are we willing to dig down deep? Are you willing to go deep with a person and start talking about things that happened to them when they were younger and stuff like that? Like, think about it. How deep can you go to a person so that way when you plant the seed, which is the idea, as you were pointing out, man, that was brilliant. Like, I'm going to sit down and think about that tonight, or I'm sure it'll take me into a stage of no thinking. But to see how everything is so connected by the idea, as the brother said, the idea of what it stands for. What does God stand for here? What does Thor stand for here? And then you start seeing it's all the same principle. It's all this
exactly.
Then it starts to just go into the same category. And then you start asking yourself, is there anything else? And then the moment that you call upon that, that's when it begins to arise. This is the trip that we're making through our consciousness. It's going somewhere. And that's the other thing. The minds that are on this world now that are doing this are also carrying other individuals into that area. And so it's really moving almost serpentine in itself, just from the level that in the front part may be the thoughts or the high thinkers, And then towards the tail, there may be the tail bearers, as they call them, but it's all still moving in the same direction, but it's still being guided by individuals that know where to go. And this is the other thing about the only thing that we really need to do, if we need to do anything, by the way, all you need to really do is breathe. But the reality is that we need to do anything that's see into what's next, meaning let your mind, if it's fertile and able to conceive higher things, start doing that, because that opens up, because you're in the front part of the frequency that's guiding everything, that opens up new light, full spectrum light, to give us an idea of where we're going. Because what's happening in this reality is that the ones who are supposed to be the leaders, and we can see this everywhere, the ones that are supposed to be the leaders are all tuned into following one thing. And that's, of course, how when you start seeing the ideas of God and the ideas of all this stuff, and you can coalesce it into one thing, you'll see that our leaders are doing that, the ones that we call our leaders. So now there must be new leaders. That's really a new age. They should have stopped asking for that kind of stuff, because it actually manifests areas in which they don't even have any control. When you ask for a new age, when you ask for a new Jerusalem, when you ask for these kind of things, it will indeed come. But how it's going to come out is what everyone will still remain clueless on at times. Now, of course, this is where we come in, because we just don't want to remain clueless why the transition is taking place. We want to be with the transition. We want to see if we can help the transition, while other ones want to around and make the transition. But like I said, one body still moving in direction, but let us be the ones that see where things going and things are going. And the only thing, again, that we have to do, to make it very clear, is that when you get into that state or in that expanse where you start to conceive even beyond, stay in that for as long as you can. And then what happens is when you walk around the reality, it opens up more fields of expansion and space, so that people stop feeling like they're so crowded. Because really what's around them is like that movie Branded, for the person who asked the question earlier. What is an infertile field? An infertile field is basically a metallic megastructure moving off of an organic electron energy, electricity, actual basic Faraday cage. So, and then you try to speak something in, but remember, now this becomes an infertile field to an organic being, but it doesn't become an infertile field to an inorganic being moving in the L shape. Meaning that
and that fertile field will be sorry.
Well, I'm getting just the realm dynamics is what I call it. In an infertile field, all the bodies that are mathematic move perfectly. Think about it.
Right. And then there's prejudice against what is not perfect. You know what really it reminds me of is I recently found out that there was some man, and I cannot remember his name, a scientist who did experiments with rats, and he basically took all these rats in the lab and got them addicted to heroin, and then he took them out of the cages and put them into, like, what may be nasty to us, but would be like a rat paradise. It was like a field with lots of garbage and garbage cans to hide in and all that sort of thing. And these same rats that had been addicted to heroin, once they got in the field that was more natural and supportive of their nature, they stopped using the heroin, even though it was still available to them. And I can see how a lot of the addictions that us humans are caught in, it's the same thing. There are entities, people, beings who know how to manipulate the field to make it acidic enough or basic enough or positive or negative or whatever enough to, like, force certain things out. And I even was seeing in one of my meditations that all the diseases we're experiencing in these, like, viral forms, all the viruses are also already in us, and the field just triggers them. So, like, you know, if you have a virus, it's not like you're getting it out there. It's more like some energy in the field triggered that in you. So they're like very sophisticated check engine lights, and each of these viruses I was shown has like a different message, like something you're not doing properly with your energy field. And I spoke to someone, I'm not going to say his name, who knows about things because he doesn't want to publicly associate himself with that idea yet, but he was saying, like, his research in genetics supports what I'm saying. So, I mean, there's just so many, like you're saying, caller, about, like, popping out of this duality of, like, chicken or egg, and we're just going back and forth, red or blue, Democrat, Republican, blah, 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 blah. Like, pop out of it. Like, why do we have to stay in this silly, tedious game? It's just tedious when I'm a creator, you know?
Give me his resistance username, because there's so many usernames, and I've been trying to track people down, but I know them more by their real names than their username.
I am James. Go on that page a second.
Oh, this is James. Oh, man, what's up, James? Okay, see.
What's up, homie? The big homie. You know what I mean?
That's a but, man. Okay.
He was incognito.
No, never incognito. There's nothing to hide anymore. There's nothing to hide. Straight talk. I mean, I was a disbeliever. I'm a skeptic. I was an offender. You know what I mean? And I said to myself,
well, we all were, yeah.
You know, if you show up for me now, this is about 2 years ago, I said, if you show up for me now, then you don't have to worry about me doubting anymore. I just have to learn. But if you show up, you got me. And if you don't show up, you can't blame me for what I do. And the universe intervenes straight up. Straight up.
Can you say, is it too much to ask you how that manifested for you, or?
Do you really want to know the answer? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I gone through a process of getting introduced to crystals. So I got a crystal from Baltimore. I was in D.C. at the time. And I just got to the point where I was, just confused. And so I sat down on a notebook and a crystal in my left hand, and I said, okay, I'm going to try my best to quantify what I believe this God thing is, like whatever the idea is, without restriction, without tradition or indoctrination. What is it? And when I got up from that session that night, I said, well, it's energy. I can keep boiling it down. It's energy, it's energy, it's energy, it's energy. So I was using Ethereum Gold at the time, and when I woke up in the morning, I continued on with the same meditation, and I happened to look at the wall. And there was, whatever vibration I was on, this was my first time into it, but whatever vibration I was on, there was something interacting with me, you know what I mean? So I asked a question, and it answered back. I mean, it can sound crazy, it can sound, kooky, think whatever you want of me, but these are the things that, catalyze me into saying what else is really here.
Right.
Besides the
you
fact
have
that
an
it tried to tell me a
experience like
phone number.
that, your curiosity is going to be, so piqued. It's
juicing
you down the rabbit hole.
I understand how powerful the mind is, and that the mind is hardwired into what it's made of, right? And so even if, when the brother speaks about division and the way in which we divide and divide and divide, and we create these firewalls and these compartments and these chambers in our mind, if you happen to go from one compartment to another without the proper customs in place, and you see that, well, this thing was always here, I just didn't perceive it. I didn't have the ability to make sense of it. So, I could keep talking about that, but the one thing I wanted to bring up was the universe seems to have hardwired itself with, the best I can say is perspective. In any situation, you can change your perspective. Uncertainty. In any situation, something uncalculated can happen. And uncertainty, perspective, and I always forget the third whenever I try to think of a list, but those are some of the things that I think about, now. I know I went from, telling my story, but the story's too long. It's pointless. I'm here now. You know what I'm saying? Perspective, uncertainty, and something else that the universe always, reestablishment. And keep the idea of death. This is the last thing I want to say. The idea of death. Death, the linear notion, the beginning, the end, A, B, no. Mm-hmm. There's only reestablishment, even if it's just down to the particles, the subatomic particles, the muons, the quarks, and everything else. That energy is only being reestablished through some consciousness. Again, is there ever a time where consciousness and energy were not?
Right.
So we get into this, in my mind, a 2D construct, a triangle, creation, maintenance, reestablishment. And I always put in parentheses death, because it looks like things are dying to us. They're only being reestablished. If the squirrel in the woods dies next to the apple tree, it will become the soil that the apple becomes. If the apple falls and the cow happens to eat the apple, then the apple becomes the cow. So it's only energy being reestablished again and again and again and again and again and again. And so I think for a lot of people, they can't separate themselves from death. It's like you'll just be reestablished. You'll loop, you'll move on to a conscious existence or whatever you have to do, but there is no death. I think that's
right, and a lot of people don't see a self beyond the physical body. They're seeing a limited wavelength of who they are, and they only see the physical. And so reincarnation it's like I am the body, so the body dies, so I die. There's not like a more expansive vision of it. But like what you're speaking about, it's like the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva thing, you know, creation, protection, destruction. And I really would like to offer you, James the caller, not Sevan, to call back on another show because it just sounds like you have a lot of interesting things to speak about. But there is another caller with a question, and we only have 6 minutes left. But I want to say thanks for calling in, and I hope we'll hear from you again.
I appreciate you dropping those jewels, James, too. Like, man, now you put the ring on that thing for sure.
Honest and balance. Thanks to Big Homie as always. You know, and I hope calling you the Big Homie isn't disrespectful. That's just something. You know.
No, man, it's cool. I mean, I know what you mean, and even the other people maybe kind of like it.
Very good. Thank you, wholeness.
Okay, cheers. Okay. We've got one more caller with a question.
How much time do we have? Are we in the 8-minute range?
Do you want to close out with something? Let me just see.
No.
Is the caller available? Yes.
I'm just checking.
Okay, yes. And Sevan, we'll keep speaking actually because it will still get in on the recording, but in terms of like the actual time frame, it will cut us off, but the recording of this call will still go after the 5 minutes. So, yes, caller, welcome. Sorry, do you have a question or a comment?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, because I don't know. You didn't do the area code, so I wanted to make sure it was me. Hi, everyone.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't do the area code because your number's coming up as all ones, and sometimes that happens like overseas.
Yes, right, things of that nature. Hi, Sevan. It's Greer Turnbull. How you doing? I wanted to ask you about the book I've been reading, Homo Sapiens. And early on in the show, one of you mentioned something about the Earth has risen and she's waiting for us to catch up. And in that book, Homo Sapiens, page 25, he writes something about the Earth won't have enough energy to ascend itself, like she just simply won't have the energy to rise.
I'm sorry if I'm laughing, but those kind of things just really make me laugh about them thinking about what Earth's energy is like. First of all, Earth is here, meaning that she does not leave her children. She's not waiting for us anywhere. Notice how when they get that going on, that means they've already made you assume that if Earth is waiting, that means it's in a location, or Mother Earth or whatever is waiting, and it's in a location then that is not where we are. That's not what's going on. She's here, and she's coiled in the base of our spine, if we wanted to give it that kind of nature of the serpentine nature, which is just the spine. People need to kind of look deeper past the snake, because that same symbol became an eagle somewhere else, and that same symbol became a cow somewhere else. But so when you can take what you're talking about from all those entities, you can find the spine there, which is in a serpentine shape. So you'll see the corridors or the frequencies of this great universal band that we're in. And what happens is that, again, if you're moving closer to the front parts of notice how people, when they think of themselves circulating energy within themselves, they don't realize also that there are other correspondences which are much larger that start to speed up and circulate too. So meaning that if you want to look at it on an external scale, you would be basically a planet really far out there. You probably couldn't even see the light, but you would start to spiral faster in that field too. So this is, again, how we expand more into who we are. We don't have to just sit down there in meditation and not understand where our energy is flowing. We can also expand into seeing exactly how big and connected we really are. But again, these are now energy techniques. So just for the record, though, these people who are talking about what Earth's up to and where Earth is, they'd be the most disconnected from Earth. Earth is right here. That there is been a skyphing, which is another conversation, but the act of cutting the child's umbilical cord, especially before it stops pumping. But there's been or cesarean, which is basically just Caesar's name. This kind of bringing children into the world, and that's been affecting things to a certain level that has to be repaired on our planet. So this is where there's a idea of disconnection. But notice how if I cut a physical arm off, but still have the camera to see that arm on a Curlian level, it is still there. Meaning, just because you lose a limb on the physical doesn't mean that is lost in the across the planes. This is just thoughts. It's almost like, again, we're being affected by our thoughts. People say that's what's happening. but sometimes we never sit down and say, what are we thinking? And I know that may seem like a riddle in itself, but in reality, to unwrap the riddle, these individuals are trying to define, and they generally have all the same message. It's frightening most of the time. The movie doesn't end good. All the aliens are bad, basically. So that seems to be a redundant story to me. I've learned the story, too. I've learned all the components of it. Now, what I know that the grand entity that I am, which is connected to everything, should realize, okay, now we should go to what's next. It's almost like you have to close the book on, you know now you're everything, okay. Now what do? Step out now. Step out into the world. See the world different. Let the world take you where it wants to show you the real beauty that it still remains here. There's never been one part of the world that hasn't been completely in a perfect shape, while even other parts of the world can be what we see as opposite. The earth is still a very big place. They're just trying to make it seem as small as the internet or as small as what's going on in front of the computer, but we're not experiencing that. We're seeing it through a picture or through a screen. That is where
I'm going to get you to pause for 1 second, Sevan, just so I can say for those people we're going to lose them, thank you for tuning in. You can hear the rest of the recording on our website. Okay, we can keep recording, but we ran out of time for it, but I really didn't want to cut you off there. And the caller can still hear you, so you can continue.
Okay, I'm glad you did that, because, most people, I've had that happen before. They just get cut off, and they're wondering what happened. Yeah,
right.
In there, but,
okay.
But I think I really pretty much got my point across, is don't let anyone start to dictate to you what is really going on in the planet and inside the planet and where it is for you and where all the energy is, like especially if it's contrary to what we already know is the truth, which is the truth. Notice how we're still reasoning about all this, but there's something about us that's still keeping us sitting here, breathing, talking, the whole time. So the big part about it is done already. Been alive, then we would have some other problems to deal with, basically. You see what I mean? So now we're actually at the level, and this is why I was also going to explain why James was on the conversation. Other people can charge up basically off of your experiences. This is another strange thing, this anomaly of pure energy in an environment of only energy, where ideas even become energy. You got idearians now, people who just live on ideas. But notice how if you tell a person your experience and that experience is truthful, it charged them. But now you may not be charged off of it anymore, and this is what happens sometimes. I call it the paranormal junkie. They've had so many different things happening. When they think something is not happening, they start thinking they're disconnected or something. When they don't realize that they are the happening. It's another reflection. You're out of basically the reflections. They say this is like there's nothing to say there because there's no one to hear it. Everything is inside. Notice even if you're talking to someone, this means there's still something external that you must communicate with. There is a space that we have that has connection with everything, and everyone's there, but no one's talking. So I'd love to get people introduced also to this internal-external system. They sometimes call it as above, so below, which becomes completely undefined and undefined in something like Crowleyism, but those terms existed before. There is a micro, macro level to what we're dealing with, and we're so intelligent that we've actually even began to uncover ways on a macrocosmic level, or even a microcosmic level, that is able to fix situations across the board. And this is a part of when we come back to the next conversation, which is what should we be doing, is that we have this system here that is set up, and we can actually access the intelligence of how to do certain things and to make certain intentions within ourselves in certain postures, certain gestures, certain things that we stop eating, certain things that we start eating, that actually metamorphosize entire fields. And there's nothing, and I just want to end this with this, for people to understand that there's nothing that's preventing you from doing this. When you raise into a high frequency, because of the laws of the universe, the low frequency beings cannot touch you. Because many people would actually wonder what if they start like advancing themselves, and then there's this extreme paranoia phase. All of the fears, drugs, or whatever is in there that's causing that. There is this paranormal wall where you wonder if you go too high with this, are you gaining the attention of someone that's going to derail you anyway, so you might as well not do it, especially after you scare yourself off enough of conspiracy. But what happens is it's straight frequency, baby. You really have to understand, as I always say, that how the entire universe is set up is on these frequencies and wavelengths, like slivers. And what happens is that when you raise yours, you go on a frequency that they don't have any control over. They don't exist. They don't have the geometry to interface with it or interface with you there. So what the reward is, and now notice, I mentioned one more thing, Michelle. This is a reward system, not a punishment system. The punishment system was introduced in Shankri with Germans and Nazis, etc. Not Germans, but Nazis, the ones who think they're the prince of the earth, Tanaim, meaning they think they know what angels know. These are the individuals that have introduced certain levels of this system that has become the most corruptive to our minds. But now it's time that we actually dissect it and start to work with the energy. Now remember, for those who can comprehend this, I've broken it into words now, can convert it back to the energy of the organic self. See, these words themselves are part of the problem, Michelle. But if we can truth, there is a vibration. Notice how your mom used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Your tone, Missy. The tone controls everything, right? So this is how we have to understand that when we come with full truth and intention, it overrides the backwards words and all the different things that we started to reveal in this reality are other the angles that keep us pinned in. To break out of that is simply a thought in itself. And so hopefully we've got enough conveyed to individuals. I like really what James introduced and many of the callers. I want to say definitely thank you. Also, the center point that the brother was speaking about earlier, like if he doesn't think I was listening to what he was saying, like I would really like him to come forward and to give us his information about the cartography because we definitely cannot ignore it. There is a
he has a book coming out, Jive Turkey, and you can look it up, jiveturkeythebook.com. He's got a blog going, so he's aiming to get it published before the end of the year. But whether that deadline is met or not, I know that he will be publishing it. And, and anybody else who has things, and Frank, anybody else out there who has a project, if you want to be on a show, contact me because I'll interview anybody. I'm very interested in anybody out there who vibrates with whatever we talked about or even part of what we talked about on the show today. If you want to connect, if you have a contribution, we've got the radio station. We're looking for people, so contact us. And I can be reached at grumpycheerleader, one word, grumpycheerleader@gmail.com. But I want to, it's a long story. My ex-boyfriend used to call me that. So I'm really interested in, just seeing where people's heads are at. Because as I explained earlier, I do a lot of work in fiction, and I'm sorting through the collective unconscious, and I totally see and feel what you're saying about being able to expand the vibration, and it's such a simple shift. But I'm seeing that a lot of people are we've got emotional blocks on us, we've got fear blocks, and I want to also do a show, probably with some people that I know who are good at this work, about real techniques to move the blockages so that you can integrate the part of you which really knows what Sevan is saying is true with the part of you that's resisting and find out why. Because you find that different people have different stories and different reasons. Some people have no problem earning money, but they can't, they don't know how to connect emotionally. Some people are really good emotionally, but they can't, balance their checkbook. Everybody's got a thing that they're stuck. So, how do you find out? It's basically what I offer in my coaching is, a technology that has you find out your specific code, down to the quantum level, and then together we can pull out what's stuck there, like the thorn and the stink monster. But it can be done in a way that's safe, where your whole system is on board, and it doesn't have to blow you, like you were speaking about, blow you all the way out of your chakra system and have you schizophrenic, Because I'm not interested in, but that, and like you said, and it is a real danger. And parts of my journey, some of the places I've been, you can feel that, wow, I got to keep circling this and keep it grounded, or you could get lost forever.
Oh man, I talked to individuals who were doing Kundalini courses, and 40, 50 years ago in Mount Shasta. These are the old heads. And people's hair would catch on fire. If you were eating too much corn syrup, it would block the entire chakra system, and the hair would catch on fire as the Kundalini started raising. So, I mean, these are people, they're old guys. They don't have any reason to lie. And so you realize that it's a real energy, it's a real thing, but again, these are just levels of awakening. I think that what's happening right now is that we need to sit back for a moment and look at what we already have. Like start assessing what we have, because what's happened is we started asking for so many things and wanting to see so much stuff. We're overlooking not the rewards from our responsibility, taking care of our responsibilities. Like basically, if you go to the field, you manage your field, everything is growing and fertile, boom, you'll eat. That's how it works. But if you get tricked to give up your during the moon, full moon, I would call it vampirism, basically. If you get drained and then you don't have a fertile field, certain things will happen. So what the resistance is, and I was thinking about this, it was kind of cracking me up, Michelle. The resistance is like a tow truck on the astral plane, and the reason why we remain still with fully arrayed, as I call it, shields always at full maximum strength, is because we have to go in at times in areas where other individuals will not go. Meaning we have to sometimes jump on websites where, they're practicing the dark magic and they're leading everyone in the darkness. Someone's got to blow a flag on that. It's like, come on. I mean, give these people a break and let them see some light. Full spectrum. Now, remember, you know how that song, Man for Man, Blinded by the Light? They're really referring to what happens with individuals that tap into the Luciferian type light, where they get their chakra basically gets damaged with this high radiance light. And I told you before, or I talked about this on another show, but notice how if someone comes too much out of the ordinary, it will pull all the energy from the individuals around them. This is what you have to also realize. If those individuals are not teaching these people how to do and become the same thing, it's basically like someone that's really attractive, really wealthy, really rich. This is how we turn in today. And they walk into a room. Everyone's like sending their energy into that individual, right? Mm-hmm. They're wondering, who is this individual, or will I get a conversation with them, etc. So we have to understand that that's why our world also doesn't have too many things out of the ordinary happening, because it always has the danger of the potential of a possible end game. This is why we all have to really start making this expansion together, not as just one person continuing to break the envelope, because it's very imperative to actually how far many of the people who think they've gotten far can really go. That's the other thing. We're really moving like a family. So the moment that we really start figuring out how to handle some of these problems, we'll be getting some action fast then. But, that's all
and I'm finding lately, like, as you can imagine, it's like things are growing. The speed at which I'm expanding is exponential. So the last year has been over the top. But I'm in a situation right now where I'm having to like really literally divorce myself from a couple people who've been in my life for a while that just they're no judgment, but they're doing their thing and they want me to keep giving energy to that thing, and it's draining me and it's super unhealthy. And I finally am basically like come to the point where it just has to be zero contact. But the response is, like a tantrum, and these are adults, but like a freak out tantrum, like this is the source of some energy that I want to suck forever, and you're telling me you're going to take it away? And I'm like, yes, I am. It's not yours to begin with. Because, again, a lot of people, they're stuck, and because of the way that their inner system is stuck, to them it really, really, really feels like I'm being a bad person, when really I'm just, stepping back because they've got to control their own energy field. They can't come and, like, lean on mine all the time, So when you as you wake up, it's like every level of waking up, there's other things that pop off that you kind of have to clear out, and it can be real uncomfortable. And, it can be overwhelming for me at times, and I can definitely see, like, it gets to certain points, and then even outside of that, in like my meditations and everything, where I'm seeing where my growth is going to be headed, it's really overwhelming. I'm just like, I really can't believe what I'm seeing, but I'm seeing it.
Well, I guess that's why we call it understanding, my dear, because 100% it gets to a point where It's all about what's going on inside of you, and you can be the best to others when you make your grand connection. Like if you know you're close or you know you have that potential, I definitely would put anything on pause to be able to obtain that potential. And then you, as you're on your way down, and I think they can only capture this in some of those Indian paintings, but on your way back down with the energy, you have the jewels, and everyone gets distributed. that talent, that ability, that energy, in some way it'll work for them because you're still connected to them. And that's one of the things that we do have to realize, all of us, is that there is somewhat of a sacrifice that one makes in order to expand themselves into higher levels of consciousness. And sometimes that sacrifice is everything that they've built up into life thus far. What happens is that they have to change constellations, so a lot of that stuff is just basically a part of one particular constellation and frequency. So I guess this would lead us to the last and the final secret of what happens when we leave this planet, because we all will, on the physical level. The reality is that how we go is going to count for everything. If we go in fear, then that's the frequency we will be in. If we are just stuck on this so much, then we will come back here indeed. If we go gently and with peace, but now peace connected to wholeness, meaning that some people use the term peace to mean, they're where they really want to be. But look, peace only means a part. It doesn't mean the whole thing. So it's a piece of the pie, like mother's apple pie. Of course, apple's a pentagram. I was thinking about that the other day, but just the apple pie thing with America. But to put in then how America used the pentagram, et cetera. But to really understand it is you have to realize that now we have this opportunity to expand in wholeness. That's just what I really will say out of this whole thing, is that right now, out of all the stuff that's happened to us, even though we're kind of jarred at times and have a problem with even waking up, there's something that's actually happening, and there are things that are beyond. Just the sheer magnitude of those things existing means that we're all right, meaning that I've actually ventured into, and as I talked about earlier, expanding your mind, I ventured into fields that were so intelligent you knew you eventually had a date with it. I'll just say it like that. Like if you go into a piece of consciousness, all you're doing is basically fast-forwarding. So you know you have a date with that. So that should put a smile on a lot of people's face. And that's all I have to say.
Right. Well, you know what? I would like to offer to you that, maybe we do another show about just that. Okay, a lot of people listening know they have a date with something. Otherwise they'd probably not be interested. They definitely wouldn't get 2 hours into this call. So people are feeling that. So maybe the next show can be about, okay, what is that? Maybe people can call in if they want to talk about what that is for them. Maybe they have a project or a vision or whatever. But we've all done so much work. I mean, you had to have done work to just be able to be in a vibration where you have an interest in this radio show. So, what's there? And I really liked what you said earlier. The seeds we planted are, we can reap what we sow, and there's already something here, to not constantly chase the carrot, what is here right now in this moment. And then you realize when you really, really ask that question, oh, it's all a game in the mind, and we're just stretching everything out and making it more complicated because we're entertaining ourselves with it, and it helps us to grow and, see the kaleidoscope from different perspectives. But it's all been wholeness the whole time. And that, again, is, I believe one of the callers even talked about it, how, there's sort of an embarrassing moment where you start to wake up and you see the game, even though you're like, oh, my God, for the magnificence of humanity that's, crumbling in a corner, it is embarrassing. It's like, oh, my God, my magnificence, what happened? But you get used to that feeling and you swallow your pride, and what is there? What are we going for? What is the purpose? What's the prize? What's the end game? So I'd like to do a show on that, and I think that's a whole show into itself.
Yeah, let's do it.
Michelle, Sevan, can y'all still hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to thank you for answering. I was like, I don't know if they still know I'm on.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. We got off on a riff, and I never even, got back to it.
On? Well, thank you, Sevan, for answering the question. And, Michelle, do you remember earlier when you mentioned Earth rising? Do you remember when you did mention that? That's what made me think of the question from the book.
Okay.
No, if you don't remember.
I do remember.
No. Yeah, you do. Okay, that's what sparked it for me. I don't want y'all thinking I'm came out of left field.
Oh no, your input seemed totally, it made sense to me.
Apt. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for calling in. Okay, thank you. Well, Sevan, I guess we should, and I'll put you on hold, caller, or on mute rather. You'll still be able to hear us. Sevan, I guess, unless you have something else that you want to sort of mention before we wrap up, I know you've already given us over 2 hours of your time, so I'll kind of let you close out. Other than asking you about that future show, is there anything else you want to add?
No, actually, I think we had a very well-rounded conversation. I mean, it really spanned into a lot of things and actually got a lot of questions answered, I'm sure. So there's really not much to add to that. Of course, I'm looking forward to the next show. And, let's just keep bringing it. It's just infinite wealth. Like all of this stuff, when you really figure out everything that's going on, you realize we create energy through thoughts. Like that's basically the thing to this, the great panacea with our ideas. We could eat our ideas. Notice how if someone says, you get a new car, right? You can have a new car. Like this level of energy within the person, they don't sleep, they don't even eat. Just if you tell them that they're going to get it tomorrow, and they know they're going to get it. Now, the only thing that's there is an idea, and behind that idea is supposed to be a guarantee. The thing is that now we have to understand how that our bodies and our minds always worked on receiving something, feeling like we were receiving something every time we took a breath. We understood that the most simplest thing to actually be super thankful for first was going to equal us having massive amounts of energy. We already figured it out. So the only thing that's after that is forgetting it. Basically, that's why I like what Dr. Blair says. You always have to do things kind of on this plane that's a little weird twice. And then the third time you seem to get it right. I guess it has something to do with us being on the third planet in the third dimension. But seriously, at some point here, people should realize that after certain things start happening to you a certain period of times, a certain amount of times, you eventually actually grow from that anyway. So I think that's what all of us are experiencing. We're starting to see is, look, I can't just run around here acting crazy forever. It's not about what my mom thinks anymore. It's not about what everyone else is thinking about this. It's actually something I'm starting to look at about myself. Then you identify basically what I call the eidolon, and we're not going to get into this too much in the show, but you start seeing this falsified character that has been built up based on the integers of the reality and how they've been affecting you. So that's also how it's easy to come out of that shell. Notice people should understand that the real thing that's happening is that the individual's coming out of a shell or a mold. It's the actual frequency. They say things are visible on the astral plane, but that shell, when the person comes out of that, sometimes you can really see that as a cocoon. At times a cocoon, if you look in nature, is really ugly at times. So we're seeing that still, be the way you win. This is the smirk on your face. Even if the hardest situations come to you, because you're immortal, as you're making it through those situations, it'll only serve to strengthen you even more. Glorious. You see, like, that's what people have to understand, this full optimism in their mind of understanding what's really going on, not what they're trying to get people to think is going on. That's all I got to say. So thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Inner world, and it's the same thing. I mean, there's race riots inside of me all the time. So it's like, even if you could, like, shift what's happening externally, it's never gonna be a harmonious thing where people can ascend unless you figure out what is inside of you, because that's what's getting put out into the field, and then we're all reacting off it. But like the source is always inside, and we're getting pulled outside all the time. You know, this culture that overstimulates us.
For sure. I mean, it's really about also being the ruler of yourself. Like when we talk about being masters, we're masters of ourselves. Like it is a battle by the body. There's a lot of chaos and confusion, but there is one who stands over that. And that's really where you just have to spend all your life being the lord of your own body and keeping everything in harmony in your body. And that, of course, is a major part of your intake. And that's it. Our evolution does come from what we intake. Like what our input is. The first one, of course, with the body is food and what we're putting inside of our bodies. But there's also our minds and also what we're putting inside of our soul. This is the one that's been completely omitted from this particular version of the Matrix, is that people are not understanding that their soul also eats too. And it changes its color spectrum. It gets larger. It gets smaller. So all these things are happening also with the soul, and because that is the ultimate vehicle, that is the vehicle that is going to be used to transcend you into the next experience, which everyone will be going to, then it's almost it's higher for us in priorities for us to really study more of what's going on with the spiritual vehicle in order for it to affect the mind and the body. Why? We're living in a reality where people are using their mind. Like I said, the mind has power, or the mind is over the body, or mind over matter. And they're using their mind to actually determine what is what's authentic and what's true. And that's just not how we should do this, especially just because of the difference between the age of the soul versus the mind. The mind basically starts as soon as you enter into this world and a little bit of the gestation in the womb. The soul is infinite. So it's almost like relying on the soul more is definitely our guide. As if everyone wants to know what is the solution to all this, the solution to all of this is speaking always by some of the most deeper speakers such as Jordan Maxwell, is that in the times that we're going in, the only thing that you're really going to need is a very close spiritual connection.
Yeah. More than
yourself.
anything. Yeah.
So, we haven't really started, but, we do have to talk about what is right now. Like, I didn't know if you wanted to take a break or if you wanted to get right into this, but you just let me know.
Yeah, well, I feel like we can keep going, and I'm watching the clock, so I'm going to make sure that we leave time at the end. Oh, I neglected to tell everybody, we do have 2 hours for the show, and I know that's kind of long, but this is our first interview together, so we're kind of finding our way, too. We'll see how it goes if the energy sustains us, but I'll make sure to leave time for callers because I want people to have a chance to call in, and I'm really curious what is on other people's minds. But, let's spend a little more time talking about what is right now, and then I'll be watching the clock, and then we'll shift into the middle part of the topic is how do we get out, and the third part is, okay, once you got that freedom and you've shaken free, what do you want? I think a lot of us know what we don't want and what we don't like to be in and what kind of fields we don't like playing in. So a lot of people on this call are very powerful and they're going to be constructing the next grid. So what do you want to do? Whether it's your own or a collective one. I think that it's helpful to really be thinking about that and putting a lot of energy into that positivity to balance, the necessary, but, sometimes sort of negative view of what's going on right now because it's a little hectic right now.
Exactly, and also I think I'm going to have to go over a little bit of the beginning that I said earlier because I'm not even sure how many people actually heard that. And, when they get upset and, sometimes they get mad about being here and they feel like Earth is a trap and all this stuff because the reality to this conspiracy wrapped inside of Enigma is they want to get you to hate Earth. So that will make sure that you don't reincarnate next, and then they can have Earth, which is what their desire is. There's a group of individuals that they want this planet because look how much stuff is here. Look at the resources. Look at all the things that are here. So what happens if someone in their mind comes up with an idea and says, I want to make it mine. I want it for myself. And then you'll start getting the idea of the controllers, as I call them the so-called controllers. So that way we understand this. Now, there's another major key to this also in regards to what goes on with karma, because many people are asking the even bigger question. Why are these individuals allowed to do this and nothing bad seems to happen to them? This is what I call the quirks of the universe. From my deeper studies, it shows me that there are certain mystical things going on with this planet, such as weird things, like if you wear white gloves, and I'm not saying this is true, but weird stuff like this. If you're wearing white gloves while doing dark deeds, then the color white counteracts the darkness. There's weird type of quirks like that with this universe. Is that why magicians,
like the stereotype of the magician is to have gloves? Oh, wow.
Well, there's multiple reasons for the white gloves, but what I'm saying is I just want people to hear this overall. There are things that they know how to do. Notice how they don't do most of the killing. They order other humans to go and kill other humans. They don't do it themselves. This is to keep their hands clean of the ghosts that haunt you or the dead person. You were the last light they saw, so they go back to you being haunted by hundreds of thousands of people that you've actually killed. So think of how this is working from that perspective. Understanding you can get the answers to all the questions, but you got to really start asking the right questions. and then you have to pursue the answer. So, of course, I've been able to pursue this for quite some time, and I've been experiencing this. That's the other thing. Like, a man can never tell a woman what pregnancy and delivery of a baby feels like. He'll never be able to do it. So there's things in this world that you can never explain to a person unless you actually go through that experience. High levels of spirituality are like that. Unless you've actually gone through the experience, you come in and explain to someone high levels of spirituality or balance and harmonic levels of spirituality, but you've never accomplished it before, is impossible. So now we have individuals that are coming forth that have had these encounters and occurrences with the spiritual world, and they are all starting to say the same thing. This is how you'll know if someone's authentic, because there is only one truth. So when a person says they have the truth, then what they should start saying should resonate and should be harmonic with you. And this is what tells you, you got to start pulling out the inconsistencies and the lies, or whether you're hearing someone that is actually working with the flow and the current of the universe, or what I also call the Innerverse. Because now
what I've noticed is like there's like emotional locks and intellectual locks that we've like metabolized. They're like in our bones that have messed up our GPS systems. So basically it's like we were conditioned to switch everything. So, we see darkness as light and light as darkness. Everything is backwards. So it's like when I hear you say that, I also think of people who've had a lot of trauma whose system doesn't even know how to do that because they're damaged. And it can be fixed. I don't mean to say damaged in a pejorative way, like dismiss them, but I mean a lot of us have a damage on that GPS. So we're susceptible to trickery,
For sure. I mean, I call it the crash-landed ship. I mean, our real power is within the energy centers within our body. Some know that as Kundalini, Prana, etc. So if that field is not functioning properly, it creates a plethora of
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Monkeys Are Really People radio network. And I would love it if someone in the chat room would just let me know if you can hear me right now. This is Michelle Gaza, and tonight I'm going to be interviewing Sevan. Is it Bomar? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, Bomar or Bomber. I've heard it all the ways.
Okay, what do you prefer?
Bomar. It's Bomar.
Bomar. Okay. Bomber only when necessary. So we had just been discussing before we got on air sort of a loose framework for the conversation this evening, but we do want to also leave some time for people to call in. Actually, one of the reasons I was so motivated to do this is whenever I see your show, I have so many questions, and I'm like, oh, my God, I wish you had a call-in feature. But I also am aware how challenging it is to do a show if you don't have a producer, to take the calls in. But anyway, first off, I want to say thank you so much for your service. Your show has been really incredible and just super validating because I'm writing fiction, so I'm working a lot in the realms of the unseen, and it can be very lonely in there in the sense of whoa, what am I seeing, and is this resonating because I'm stuck on something, or is there something sort of objectively there that's worthwhile for me to discuss, with other people, or is it just my own shit? So hearing you speak, it's like the sketch starts to get colors filling in, and I can, see better, And James Gregory said it really well to me the other day. He said, it's like you're talking about an invisible picture. I'm like, yeah, invisible picture. So, do you want to just sort of start riffing, and we'll go from there?
Well, sure. I mean, we can get this thing started. I just want to definitely say thank you for having me on the show, and just wholeness to everyone. And, of course, you're more than welcome. All the information that we've been able to produce thus far has really been a cyclic or basically a very perpetual thing with the resistance and the members of the resistance and all the individuals that have contributed their time, their resources, and their skills to putting this together. And yes, for sure, the nonfiction and the fiction begin to blur. Even today, we're going to talk about the mind, body, and soul, but after a while, you start to see how everything blurs, that if you're doing one thing, it kind of blurs into another field. And so it's just really good to kind of have a beacon through all of this. Like, it's serious. We're going through life. We don't have to walk around like lemmings and dummies all day and not paying attention to the big questions. And it's good that, we're finally getting together and everyone with that same idea of wanting to know what expansion really is starting to collect themselves and putting themselves into the right type of frequency. So that's awesome.
And as I hear you talking, I feel like maybe I should just share with people just the real structural outline of what we thought we'd do this evening. So I had proposed that we kind of discuss what's happening right now, present time on Earth. And I know that changes like second to second, especially right now. There's just so much energy shifting. Like, I'm a different person every day. Like, literally yesterday I was trying to find something, and I couldn't even get back to the part of me that had moved it, like amongst my art supplies. And I was like, which timeline am I on? It feels like that sometimes. So it's moving very quickly. So we're going to try to, as much as we can, talk about where it is right now, what's going on, how did we get here, what are the traps keeping us here, and the choices we're making, consciously or otherwise. And then, to me, it felt very important to spend a lot of time talking about what do we actually want. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening in, otherwise you wouldn't even really be interested to the show, are feeling a much more intense and deep connection with their own power. So, okay, we're coming into our power, we're coming into our own, so what are we going to do with this power? How will we wield it, And when our models have been about force, not power. So that's the framework for this evening. I hope we do a pretty satisfying job with that, but that's it.
Blockages and stagnancies, and that equals something in the mental, physical, and spiritual world. It doesn't just happen and there's no reaction. But this is also where the thing is gone crazy at this point. It's an extreme short circuit to a human brain because we're always looking for who is evil then, who is the evil one.
Right,
it's your responsibility. And I'll tell people this, evil or doing dark deeds, it has its causes and effects. If a person goes around stealing all day, it's only a matter of time before they get caught and something happens to them. Just understand the regular level of life. So what you're really looking at is the universe is not sitting back here trying to figure out who's good and who's evil, and the universe is either good or evil. The universe is not into that. It knows that whatever you do, there is a result for what you do. Systems handled. It goes with everything else. And so while we are down here short-circuiting on who's the bad one, who's the good one, and then even partaking in daily, all the time, in what we can consider bad for one group and good for another group, then this leaves us in a constant of going nowhere. It's like a dog chasing its tail.
Yes.
So,
and then keeping people in like a very narrow range of experience, which is what colonization has done, keeps you, it's the whole curiosity killed the cat thing. Everybody's like afraid or unaware of what's happening outside, and it just perpetuates itself because everything that you actually need to heal is bad or forbidden or taboo, or people flip it and do it in a rebellious way that's like a toxic mimic of the real healing power. Does that make sense?
Here's a major reason also for that. Humanity was not geared to work in division. It was not, humanity is not geared to work where one person does all the work, or 1% of humanity does all the work. It was never designed like that. If so, then everyone would be exact duplicates of each other. How it was created is you'll see certain individuals have a lot of physical strength, while others have mental strength, others have spiritual strength. Some can't see and they're blind in their eyes, but that means that their sense of feeling is heightened. Why you see what I mean? So what happens is we're all functioning in this group where everyone knows their gift. Then you don't see that separation. So so-called know how to work division within races. The race make everyone have a race or a competition about who's the best. This, of course, always leads to eugenics. It always leads to your caste systems. It always leads to hierarchies. So there is a specific, there's, again, the cause and effect, and that's why if you move out of the good and evil, it allows you to see the steam of it, because good and evil, in my book, equal just black and white, or hot and cold. I'm looking for the steam or the warm of the whole thing. That's the answer to the things. And so this is also how we have to gear ourselves, especially going into 2013. We really have to allow our minds to take a break on what it does all year. You see now, look, Hurricane Sandy. Because the Earth has to respond to all of the ideas of the Revelation style, Mayan style, like I say, in your world like the Mayans.
Right.
The Mayan structure phase. So it has to manifest some way. But it's good. That's with the total world destruction, because that is not something that is possible. This is what we always have to understand. Earth's been here for billions of years. It's about whether we can ride Earth, not whether Earth is going to survive. So
I've actually heard a lot of mystics say that Earth is already ascended and she's waiting for us to catch up. So it's not even about, save the planet in that sense anymore. And what you're saying too about the division, I feel like sort of metaphorically the same thing, but flipping it is people are divided inside. We're divided from our own selves. The division we see outside is internalized and like going through the looking glass to go in your soul. So let's start really there. Like what's going on
really
right now?
I would just say really excellent stance, by the way. It's like, coming into the power, coming into the energy, the full realization. So now what do we do? It's like, you feel like this phenomenal power, but not really knowing where to direct it. So it just kind of may get directed at the neighbor, or may get directed at the girlfriend or the husband, or, may get directed in the wrong area at times. And so I first want to say, I really want to start this off on the right frequency and right tone. Just let everyone know Earth is a gift. I had even the chance recently, about 72 hours ago, to go into such a higher level of the crown chakra and interfacing with the oversoul, which is basically just telling you how it is, but it's so soft and gentle the way it's being explained. But explaining to me, Earth is a gift. It's the human species doing this to the human species. Let's get that clear. Before the human species arrived on
Okay, everybody. Everything is fine. Everything is beautiful. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to see if they could actually hear me now.
Okay, so now I'm going to stop for station identification again. Monkeys Are Really People Radio, and I would like to thank Michael, Mr. Fun, for manning the chat room this evening. This evening's show is brought to you by Jive Turkey the Book. You can find out more about it at jiveturkeythebook.com. Okay. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So we were kind of talking about where we're at right now, generally speaking, on the planet.
So I do want to let everyone know, because other people have connection problems on this.
Okay, I think he just went out again. So I'm going to ask the audience, can you all also just say a prayer for the energy between Costa Rica and Chicago? No comprendo. What is happening? So we're going to wait again for him to come online. You know what? I'm going to bring some of the callers online. Oh, here he goes. Okay, James, hello?
Yeah, I think that may be switchboard issues. I think it may be smashing things together in the switchboard, because these kind of errors, they generally they don't happen if there's a breakup in the voice and things, and you can kind of tell it's a connection issue. But with these breakups where they're just cutting off, it's definitely probably a switchboard issue.
You know what? If I log out, does it? Sorry in the audience for the housekeeping, but we're going to have to show you.
This is real.
Show you the back ending.
This is organic.
Yeah. Right. Right. We're going to be real transparent. So if I log out of the internet connection, does it cut off the show? I think it does. That's the thing. I'm wondering.
Okay, well, I was just thinking you should be okay, but if you have two switchboards open, that may be your situation.
Oh, that's what's happening. That's what's happening because my partner's producing in the thing. Okay, so if it happens again, we might have to have him log in as someone else. Yeah. So, Michael, if you hear this, if you could log out and log in as somebody else, just like a generic guest. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
I'm going to keep going into this because I know people on the phone are like, okay, are they going to get started or am I going to sleep? Right. But just to let you know, again, to set the tone of this, Earth is a gift. And, you have to understand that this planet can stand on its own. And for you to understand exactly the fertility and abundance that's associated with this planet, simply take something like an orange and cut it in half, such an organic orange that you just find in the field growing on a tree, and then count how many seeds are in there. It'll be like tons of seeds. And if you could imagine each one of those seeds as a tree, and if you just would plant it, then it would be a tree for you in a certain time, a certain measure, then you can just get it. You can really understand that if Earth was just an open field and everyone could really plant and build up their current and energy and be fertile, etc., then there would be a lot of abundance. So the idea of scarcity has come from the human species, not from the planet. So we just need to make that clear today so that way people start understanding how to direct their energy